Hey guys, tonight we slip into a story that sparkles with golden firelight and drifts with the hush of divine footsteps. Imagine Olympus under a canopy of stars, so clear you could trace the veins of silver across the sky. The gods lounge in their high halls, but one queen, Hera, regal and restless, leans on the marble balcony, gazing down at the faint glow of mortal hearths. You feel her questions pressing, almost as though they're your own. Why do mortals keep fighting, loving, betraying, praying? And what if just once she could step beyond the usual divine pathways and test a different kind of power? You probably won't survive this if you try it yourself. Borrowed god shoes are not exactly covered by warranty. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love it if you posted your location and the local time in the comments. Seriously, it's like weaving a little constellation of all of us listening together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air on Olympus carries a perfume of crushed laurel and the sharper bite of bronze. You trudge beside Hera as though she's let you trail her train, and you notice how her eyes follow not the grand halls but the distant earth. Down there, farmers gather in fields, tossing grain toward the sky in prayer. Did you know that in actual ancient rituals, Greeks really did toss barley or other grains during sacrifices? It wasn't wasted food. They thought it opened a line to the gods. Hera listens to those whispered prayers, and you can almost hear the scrape of their hope against her heart. Yet tonight she's restless. She remembers, in a sly flicker, that her son Hephaestus, lame, clever, smudged with ash, keeps toys stranger than most mortals could dream. He doesn't just hammer swords or shields. No, tucked away in the firelit cave at Olympus' edge, he forges contraptions. Legends tell of self-moving tripods, golden servants that could walk into a feast and roll away again. Historians still argue whether such stories are echoes of real ancient automata, like the gear-driven wonders of Alexandria, or just mythology puffed up with bronze smoke. Either way, Hera knows one thing. Hephaestus has shoes that gleam like sunrise and whisper like storm wind. You imagine her sliding a finger along the marble railing, calculating. Hera is no stranger to planning. After all, myths cast her as jealous, vengeful, cunning. But here, you feel something softer. Maybe she just wants freedom. Maybe she craves the kind of motion even a goddess rarely feels. Untethered steps across heaven and earth. And yet, she knows Zeus. His thundercloud moods are quick to gather. Sneaking feels safer. The night deepens. A cricket's hum from below drifts faintly upward, mixing with the distant clatter of goblets in another hall. You picture Hera's breath slowing, her resolve tightening. She doesn't want to be caught, not tonight. Down in the mortal world, real women of antiquity faced a different trap: marriage contracts. Greek wives had little choice in their husbands, bound by oaths and dowries. Quirky fact for you. Some Athenians used marriage contracts that even specified how many olives or goats were owed if the deal broke. Not exactly romantic. Hera, queen of marriage herself, surely knows those chains. Maybe that's why she itches to borrow chains of her own choosing, even magical ones shaped as sandals. Your steps follow as she drifts into shadowed corridors. Somewhere ahead, sparks crackle, faint hammer strikes echo. The forge is awake, and in her mind the thought repeats, steady as heartbeat. Tonight, I borrow what is mine to use, whether gifted or not. The path tilts downward, leading you both into cooler air where stone sweats and the smell of smoke seeps from cracks. You're almost at Hephaestus' hidden workshop, where the magical shoes wait, humming with secret purpose. The stars above glimmer like they know, like they're keeping score. You slip behind Hera, silent as a shadow and twice as curious, as the palace marble gives way to stone warmed by a different sun. The path narrows, the air thickens, and the chatter of the banquetiers fades until all you hear is a distant, steady percussion. Metal on metal, an old heartbeat measured in hammer strikes. Hephaestus' workshop breathes like an animal. Its mouth is a yawning arch of soot-black stone, rimmed with the faintest veins of cooled slag that glitter like fossilized lightning. As you step forward, the shadows feel tactile, like velvet curtains hiding a mechanical soul. A line of bellows hisses and swells, filling the air with the smell of hot iron and a faint sulfur tang that pinches the back of your throat. You remember, because someone told you once at a museum, that real ancient smiths used bellows to get furnaces red hot, raising the temperature enough to change metal's temper. So this smell is historically accurate and not just theatrical smoke. That small, solid fact steadies you. It reminds you that even gods work within a craft's rules. Sparks leap like tiny fireflies and dissolve before you can follow them. Shadows of sparks smear along the walls like a slow, glittering tide. Hephaestus is there, of course, all elbows in ash, a generous wedge of a man with grease under his fingernails and the patient cruelty of someone who loves machinery more than gossip. He looks up but does not stand. His chair is a carved anvil of sorts, and his hands never really stop even when idle. Around him, things transform from rawness into purpose. A strip of red-hot metal will crawl across a table and, under a practiced thumb, yield. Iron will take a bend you didn't think possible. You watch, rapt, as metal learns manners under the tips of his fingers. There are contraptions here that make your knees feel religious. You pass a row of tiny automata, brass birds with hammered feathers, a toy chariot whose wheels are concentric gears, a bronze dog whose jaw still opens and snaps when a bell tugs its chain. Fringe stories whisper that Hephaestus once made a man of metal who could walk around Athena's temple to guard it. You can almost taste the flourishes of those tales. Historians still argue whether ancient descriptions of automata represent actual mechanical devices or are poetic metaphors blown up by proud storytellers and later fancy. The debate hangs in the smoke, and you find it oddly comforting that humans argue over whether myth and machine ever really touched. As you edge farther in, the workshop reveals scale. It's not just a room, it's a mapped underworld of craft. Pipes carry hot oil and steam. Pulleys hang like lazy constellations. A water trough murmurs with tempering pools. Metal plunged into water to change its temper and make it obedient. You catch a glimpse of a set of sandals, unfinished, that glimmer with fury, gold threads braided with a silvery lattice that seems to hum. For a split second your skin pricks. Whoever made these did not merely hammer metal. They translated intent into object. A modern aside digs into your brain like a friendly footnote. Think of Hephaestus' shop as the antique prototype of today's makerspaces. Only instead of Arduino boards and 3D printers, the tools are volcanoes tamped into kilns, and the hacks involve gods' names etched into hot bronze. In both places, people lose time and come out holding something that feels like magic. That parallel is strangely reassuring. The human itch to tinker hasn't changed, only the materials and the playlist. The larger pieces are almost architectural. A half-built tripod on 3 articulated legs, its sockets rounded and waiting for a top that will carry a small furnace. A wheeled platform with a hidden reservoir, perhaps designed to carry gifts without the accuser's eyes. Shelves stocked with alloys, bronze, electrum, a sliver of something that glows when struck, like a star that refuses to go out. Ancient craftsmen cared about mixes. Bronze itself is a deliberate union of copper and tin, and the Bronze Age's leap forward was precisely that marriage of metals. Archaeologists have found evidence of Greek workshops producing iron and bronze implements as early as the late Bronze Age into the early Iron Age, which means the craft you're watching has deep, dirt-stained roots in real human history. When Hephaestus speaks, his voice is a rasp that carries across the room. He says little, but everything in the workshop answers him with a groan or a hiss, the machinery acknowledging a voice that's used to giving orders. He points you toward a bench where the so-called shoes rest. They are smaller than you expected. Footwear often is intimately scaled to its wearer. Yet they shine with an impossible patience. The leather is woven with threads of gold that do not melt, and small plates of metal overlap like the scales of a very obedient fish. You reach for them, and the hairs on your arm rise, not from temperature but from sudden understanding. These shoes are made not only to transport feet, but to translate intent. A map etched into their soles hints at a different cartography. Paths through wind and cloud rather than roads and fields. Hephaestus watches you, and there's a moment when the room contracts into a single attentive silence. He offers the shoes, not with ceremony, but with a kind of wary hospitality. "Take them," he says. But no, tools are honest in the way people are not. His words are practical and also a warning. Your hand lingers on one strap, and you feel a pulse, tiny, like a heartbeat from something that has slept a long while. A small charm, tucked under the arch, catches the light. It's inscribed with a pattern you half recognize from a funerary bowl you once saw in a gallery. Interlocking waves that mean both water and return. Strange tidbit. Some ancient smiths prized meteoric iron, and in a kind of romantic metallurgy, worked it into weapons and ornaments because sky metal carried a story. You wonder if Hephaestus ever folded a fragment of star into a strap to make it sure. Near the back of the forge, a door leads to a place that smells different, drier, shaded with old ash. Hephaestus calls it his thinking room, a space where maps and failed sketches hang like ghosts. On a table lie notes, drawings of pulley placements, little diagrams that look like attempts at early engineering. Someone here has tried to make craft reproducible, to turn an art into a method. You can almost see the bridge forming between hands-on work and something like early science. Historians still argue whether pockets of technical knowledge in the ancient world were isolated curios or the seedbeds for systematic craft. The sketches suggest the latter. As you prepare to take the shoes, because of course Hera will, and you've been given the part where you're the shadow in her sleeve, you notice a small plaque hammered into a support beam. It reads, in rough script, half-smoked and honest. All tools reveal their maker in use. The phrase hovers between practical reminder and philosophical claim. Hephaestus' life is written in his iron. Lameness that somehow made him reliable, solitude that made him inventive, focus that made his objects speak. Before you slip the shoes on, Hephaestus taps your shoulder, not to discourage, but to test. His hand is warm, surprisingly deft. "Remember," he murmurs, "metal listens to rhythm." You read his meaning as comfort and instruction. Move as you mean, and the shoes will follow. The room seems to exhale, and somewhere outside, the night on Olympus shifts, as if a single small change in a hidden workshop has rippled outward like a dropped coin. You slide the sandals on. They fit like a promise, tight in all the right places, a little defiant under the heel. A current runs up your legs that is not cold, not hot, but clear like the taste of mountain wind. Beneath the roar of hammers, you hear a different sound now, a soft, precise ticking, like a clock learning a new time. Hephaestus watches that new rhythm, and for a moment the stern artisan allows a flicker of something like approval, rare currency in his workshop. You stand a moment, feeling the weight of centuries in the leather and the lightness of possibility in the soul. It is a strange combination that makes you laugh quietly at yourself. The idea that a simple object could change how you move through the world feels both silly and dangerous. And that exact mix is why smiths have always been treated half like saints and half like suspected conspirators. The shop returns to its ordinary work. Hammers, sparks, the soft hiss of quenching water. Yet you sense that something small and important has shifted. Footwear intended to carry a queen now sits snug on a mortal or a god, ready to escort intentions across both stone and cloud. You tuck that thought in the pocket of your mind, like the sketch paper Hephaestus keeps, because sometimes it's the tiny, private things that change how empires move. The sandals gleam in the forge's low light, and you trail after Hera as she carries them out, cradling them as though they're both treasure and liability. The night air outside the workshop feels suddenly thin, sharp, eager, as if Olympus itself has noticed. Hera pauses under a colonnade where the moonlight slices through fluted pillars, and she sets the sandals down to study them properly. They're not ordinary shoes. They hum with their own agenda. The straps are spun of gold finer than hair, laced through leather so dark it might have been cured in starlight. Tiny plates overlap at the heel, flexing like scales, each etched with patterns that shimmer when you tilt your head. For a moment they seem to show rivers, then clouds, then branching lightning. The soles, though, are the strangest. They're carved not with treads but with spirals, arcs, and repeating wave marks, like an architect's doodles of invisible maps. You crouch beside her, and you almost hear the sandals whisper. Not words exactly, more like the shiver of wind sneaking through mountain passes, promising paths where no mortal has walked. Hera's eyes glint, and you know she hears it too. Did you know that in real ancient Greek culture, sandals weren't just practical footwear? Archaeologists have found pairs decorated so richly, beads, dyed leather, gilded edges, that they were ceremonial objects as much as shoes. Some scholars even argue whether Homer's frequent mentions of well-sandaled characters hint at status symbols more than simple description. A queen like Hera would absolutely appreciate that symbolic weight. Still, these are not just ceremonial. You notice a charm dangling from one strap, a little bronze cicada. Quirky fact: cicadas in ancient Athens were worn as hair ornaments, symbols of immortality and music. Maybe Hephaestus added it as a joke, or maybe it's a key. When Hera touches it, the sandals click faintly, like a lock agreeing to open. The goddess slips one foot in, then the other. The sandals close around her skin without her pulling the straps, hugging tight, as if they've decided she belongs to them. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then, her breath catches, and the air around her seems to adjust. Her robe flutters, though there's no breeze. The marble beneath her feet shivers with a low, metallic vibration. Hera takes a careful step. The sandals glow at the edges, faint blue-white, leaving a trace in the air that evaporates like breath on glass. Her second step lifts her half a handspan higher, though she doesn't bend her knees. She hovers, poised, regal, like some celestial marionette cut loose from its strings. You feel giddy watching. It's like the moment you first try roller skates, or, if you're less sporty, when you first balance on a moving escalator. Your stomach dips, but your grin widens. Hera steadies herself, lips pursed in regal concentration, and then she lets go of hesitation. She walks, and the sandals walk the air. She rises to the level of the column tops, her robe trailing like painted silk in water. The night sky pulls her upward, and for the first time in centuries, she feels the thrill of movement that isn't bound to Zeus' storms or Hermes' messenger roads. She carves her own path. And yet, you can tell this is not without danger. A faint heat radiates from the sandals, warming the stones beneath even as she floats. Hephaestus built these with both generosity and trap-like precision. Remember how real historical artisans sometimes built mechanisms that seemed to perform miracles, but only under strict conditions? Take Hero of Alexandria, the engineer who made temple doors open automatically when fire heated air and water inside. The trick only worked if all pieces were aligned and the pressure maintained. Historians still argue whether people at the time understood these as clever machines or true divine marvels. Hera is treading on that same edge. Miracle or mechanism, and one wrong tilt could drop her. From below, the gardens of Olympus sway gently in the breeze, cypresses like ink strokes on marble. The sandals amplify everything. She hears fountains splashing more crisply, catches the murmur of distant prayers more clearly, even feels the faint tug of the stars. She lifts her arms like wings, and for a moment you think, no, she is free of Zeus' shadow. Then she lands, lightly as falling petals, back on the cool stone floor. Her eyes are brighter, sharper, as though she's tasted something addictive. You recognize that look. The look of someone who's found a door they weren't supposed to open and has no intention of forgetting it exists. She crouches, runs her hand across the sandal's glowing straps, and whispers a vow so soft you nearly miss it. These are mine to borrow. The shoes hum in agreement, or warning. Hard to tell which. A cricket chirps in the grass, absurdly normal after all that, and you let out a shaky laugh. Hera ignores you. She's already planning her next move. The sandals are tucked under Hera's arm now, dimmed but still buzzing faintly, like bees trapped in golden honey. She glides through Olympus colonnades with that calculated stillness only she can muster, the way a queen carries secrets without disturbing her crown. You pad behind, careful to match her silence. The marble floors carry sound too easily, and here on Olympus, a careless heel can echo like a confession. She knows she cannot wear them openly, not yet. Zeus notices everything he chooses to notice, and when he doesn't, he eventually pretends he had all along. To slip out of his gaze requires precision, timing, and yes, a little daring. Hera presses the sandals against her robe, close to her chest, as if holding a fragile child. You wonder if she's protecting the sandals from discovery or protecting herself from the sandals' whispering temptation. The moonlight follows her, silvering her face. She pauses at a balcony where torchlight from the feasting hall flickers across the lawn. A roar of laughter spills out, thunderous in its confidence. Zeus must be in the thick of it, goblet in hand, boasting about wars he didn't quite win or women he shouldn't quite name. Hera leans on the stone, shoulders stiff. You've seen this posture before, the queen pretending indifference while her mind sharpens like a blade. She whispers, mostly to herself, "If he knew I had these, he'd cage the sky itself." You catch the tremor under her voice, not fear, but a spark of defiance. Real history nudges into your ear. In Greek households, wives often had no power to wander freely. Their world was bounded by home and reputation. The goddess of marriage herself seems to echo those limits, and the sandals are her rebellion, like slipping a forbidden key into her palm. Quirky fact: some ancient women wore amulets shaped like little shoes, believed to guard against wandering spirits or infertility. Shoes weren't just shoes. They were symbols of control over paths both mortal and divine. Hera tightens her grip on the sandals. She's planning already. She'll borrow them in secret, yes, but more than that, she'll use them strategically. You've watched her long enough to know this isn't just a joyride. Hera never moves without intention. She steps into a shaded hallway where frescoes of earlier gods line the walls. Titans toppled, storms bound, victories immortalized. In each painting, Zeus is at the center, lightning raised. Hera's role is quieter, painted at his side, a supportive silhouette. But her eyes linger on the figures who resist: Prometheus with his torch, Hecate at the crossroads, even Artemis running free with her bow. Each one holds a freedom Zeus cannot quite contain. Hera exhales a long, steady stream of air, and you sense her resolve harden. And yet there's risk. If anyone discovers her plan before she's ready, especially Zeus, Olympus will crackle with gossip. Hermes would tease, Apollo would pry, Aphrodite would smirk knowingly. Even Demeter, usually sympathetic, might question why Hera meddles with a son's craft behind her husband's back. Olympus is a palace of whispers, after all. Historians still argue whether myths about Hera's schemes reflect ancient anxieties about women's autonomy, or whether they're later embellishments by storytellers looking for drama. What is clear is that Hera in these stories rarely accepts passivity. Tonight's secret sandals are simply another tool in her long tradition of subtle rebellion. She slips into her private chamber, a room draped in peacock feathers and cool silk. She lays the sandals on a low table, staring at them as though they're a mirror. Her fingers brush the cicada charm again, and she half smiles. A plan has begun, and once Hera has a plan, Olympus itself should probably worry. You catch yourself holding your breath, as though you too are waiting for Zeus to barge in, thunder in his eyes. But no, he's still laughing in the feasting hall, blind to the quiet storm gathering in his queen's hands. Hera exhales, smooths her robe, and leans closer to the sandals. "Tomorrow," she murmurs, and you know she means it. You follow Hera into the dim corridor that branches away from her chambers, a passage most gods forget exists. The walls here are not marble but darker stone, veined with quartz that glints when torchlight bends across it. The sandals rest in a small satchel at her side, but they hum so faintly you feel as if the entire hallway is breathing in time with them. Hera keeps her chin lifted, shoulders squared, but her steps are measured, almost feline. You notice how sound travels here, too easily, too dangerously. Every scuff echoes, bouncing off stone, ricocheting like a secret unwilling to stay quiet. And Olympus is full of listeners. She isn't alone. A pair of nymphs pass by at the far end, whispering and giggling. Their voices are as light as falling petals, but Hera freezes all the same. Her eyes flicker with the cool sharpness of someone who has navigated centuries of gossip. You've heard the saying, walls have ears. Well, on Olympus, even statues might. A marble bust of Apollo peers down from a niche, expression smug, as if ready to sprint off and report what it sees. Hera adjusts her robe and resumes walking with queenly grace, the sandals tucked tighter against her. If anyone asks, she's merely strolling. She knows how to weaponize appearances. Her calm smile has hidden schemes before, and it will again. From somewhere deeper in the hall comes a sound, a laugh. Too sharp, too amused. Hermes. He's always slipping into places uninvited, leaving trails of chuckles and riddles. Hera quickens her pace, keeping to the shadows where torchlight doesn't reach. You pad behind, your heartbeat embarrassingly loud in your own ears. Quirky tidbit for you. In real Greek temples, corridors were sometimes built deliberately narrow, so processions of worshippers would move slowly and solemnly, their footsteps magnified by echo. The effect made the smallest groups sound like vast, holy throngs. You're experiencing that same trick now. Every scrape of Hera's sandals feels like an announcement. She pauses at a carved doorway, pressing her hand flat against the cool stone. The sandals buzz faintly, as though eager to be worn again. Hera narrows her eyes, considering. She doesn't dare put them on here, not with Hermes lurking nearby and Apollo's statues staring holes through her back. Instead, she slips into a quieter antechamber. It's smaller, less regal. This is where attendants once kept scrolls, now abandoned and dusty. Shelves sag under the weight of old papyri. Hera brushes her fingers along one and smiles bitterly. Secrets upon secrets, she seems to think. She sits, laying the sandals before her, and for a moment you catch her in rare vulnerability. Not the queen, not the schemer, just a woman with a longing for escape and a gnawing awareness that she cannot let anyone see it. Historians still argue whether myths painted Hera unfairly, focusing only on jealousy and vindictiveness while ignoring the complexity of her role as protector of marriage and women. Watching her now, you can't help wondering, was she really the tyrant some storytellers made her, or a misunderstood strategist playing a rigged game? The corridor outside stirs again, footsteps, hushed voices. Hera stiffens. She scoops up the sandals, presses them against her chest, and whispers under her breath, "Not tonight." You feel the tension coiled in her spine as she slips back into the hallway, face composed, voice silent. The sandals' hum fades into her heartbeat, and the gossiping walls are left with nothing but guesses. Hera has passed through Olympus like a rumor herself, present, undeniable, but too slippery to pin down. The corridor empties into a broad gallery where torchlight gilds the high ceiling. Hera moves through it like a shadow stitched into gold, but her mind is louder than her steps. You can almost hear it, an old, relentless echo of quarrels that still simmer between her and Zeus. Every feathered fresco on the walls reminds her of him. Zeus the conqueror, Zeus the father of too many children, Zeus the thunderous host of laughter in the feasting hall. Hera doesn't linger on the painted victories. She lingers on the betrayals. You sense her breath catch as she passes one mural in particular. Europa, the mortal woman carried across the sea by Zeus in bull's disguise. Hera's mouth tightens. For centuries she's watched her husband descend in disguise, take what he wants, then rise again untouchable. The sandals in her arms hum as though offering her a counterweight, a way to slip beyond his thunder's reach. She remembers quarrels past, and you find yourself remembering with her. Those long shouting matches that rattled Olympus like earthquakes, the time she plotted against him, the moments when Zeus shackled her with golden chains and suspended her from the sky as punishment. A harsh image, but one whispered through myth. Historians still argue whether such stories reflect older traditions of sky gods binding earth goddesses, or if they were later added to dramatize the imbalance between them. Either way, Hera carries those scars. They shape her silence tonight. You trail her into a smaller chamber where peacock feathers hang on the walls, iridescent even in dim torchlight. She runs a hand across them, steadying herself. It's almost funny. Her sacred bird, the peacock, struts in mortal courtyards as a symbol of vanity. Yet here, in her private room, its eyes feel like guardians, watching with fierce sympathy. Quirky fact: ancient Romans later believed peacock flesh never decayed, a sign of immortality. They even served roasted peacock at feasts, feathers reattached for spectacle. Imagine Hera's grim amusement at mortals eating her sacred bird for status, while she herself uses its gaze as a shield against Zeus' betrayals. The sandals lie before her now on a polished table. She doesn't touch them. Instead, she leans forward, whispering almost like a prayer, not to the gods, but to herself. If I must endure, I will endure with cunning, but I will not endure powerless. Her voice is low, but you feel the weight of it in your bones. It isn't rage. It isn't jealousy. It's resolve. For a queen who has been painted as reactionary, her plotting feels more like survival, a refusal to dissolve into silence under Zeus' thunder. You glance at the sandals, and the cicada charm shivers faintly, answering her vow. The air grows heavier, almost storm-like, though no clouds gather above. It's as if the shoes themselves respond to her spirit, sensing the old quarrels that drive her now. She straightens, adjusts her robe, and smooths her hair until every strand falls like marble polished to perfection. When she steps out of the chamber, her face is serene, queenly again. No one passing in the hallway would guess what memories thunder in her chest. Only you, walking in her shadow, feel the hidden tremor. The old wounds Zeus cannot erase, fueling the plan Hera will not abandon. You stand at the threshold while Hephaestus studies you both. Hera with her borrowed sandals folded like a secret in her lap, and you like a spare thought. Hephaestus looks every inch the thing people sketch when they think of a master smith, broad-shouldered, arms thick with corded muscle, a face smudged with the warm, honest coal dust of someone who has made his life by turning raw stuff into purpose. He grunts, a sound that might be annoyance or amusement. Gods often make the same noise for both. He's reluctant, yes, but there's also that odd affection in the way he watches Hera handle his work. After all, myth remembers him as her son in some versions. Hera birthed Hephaestus alone, angry and brilliant, and that lineage curls around the scene whether Zeus likes it or not. That, if you like history, is a simple fact. Several ancient sources describe Hephaestus as Hera's son, sometimes born without a father, and the statue at the Hephaestion in Athens still reminds scholars of his craft's civic importance. He wipes his hands on a rag that has seen more fires than a kitchen stove and squints at the sandals. "You know what these do?" he asks finally, as if the question were a test he's not sure he wants to grade. He speaks slowly, and every syllable seems to land on the metal benches around you. They are honest tools. They tell you where you want to go before you do. They will carry you if you let them. There's a grudging pride there, the kind that smiths wear like a second skin. They build stubbornly, as if the universe is a problem that needs fixing. You sense his reluctance in other ways too. He's not offering them freely. He sets conditions in the way a man sets down coals, and waits to see which sparks catch. He taps one sandal, and it emits a barely audible chime, a tone like a small bell vibrating at the edge of hearing. "I made them to trace paths," Hephaestus says, eyes narrow. "Not to make trouble. I owe no one trouble." The words are practical, but they carry a weight. His forge has its own rules. Metal can be coaxed, shaped, betrayed, but it does not lie. He's warning you both that this gift is not uncomplicated. Hera, as queens do, answers with calm. Her fingers move across the cicada charm, and for a moment the goddess looks almost like a woman testing a clasp on an heirloom. "Will they take me where I wish?" she asks. The honesty in Hephaestus' reply is almost tender. "They will take you where you mean," he says. "They are clever for a shoe, but not for a heart. There's that line, tools obey intention, people disguise it." Hephaestus clearly prefers the former. A fringe tidbit slips into the margins of your mind as he speaks. Old poets loved to whisper that Hephaestus made machines that walked and servants that hummed like bees, bronze giants and self-moving tripods. Telos, the bronze sentinel of Crete, is often credited as Hephaestus' handiwork. The stories make you wonder if ancient minds were less enchanted by the supernatural and more impressed by the promise of clever gears and levers. Hephaestus, in his way, is a bridge between myth and a very hands-on kind of proto-engineering. You can almost see the wheels turning in his head as he contemplates consequences. He pushes over a small wooden stool and sits, motioning for Hera to set the shoes between them. The benches around the forge seem to lean in, like a crowd at a modest play. He studies her face, and something like a plan runs across his features. If you borrow them, he says, the shoes will ask of you a rhythm. His voice lowers, the way someone might lower the volume of bad news. They answer to steps that mean something. They will show you doors. He folds his fingers like a man who has stitched armor and then found the stitch inside his own palm. But they do not lie about price. You realize he's offering more than footwear. He's offering terms. He keeps his conditions deliberately vague, small, careful phrases that could be as much warning as philosophy. You, trailing her shadow, want to press, to ask what he means by price. But the forge feels full of eyes, echoes of ancient craftsmen who once judged the honesty of an artisan. Hephaestus' reluctance probably masks two things: respect for his creation and an awareness of Hera's complicated life with Zeus. He's watched the two of them in a dozen myths, arguing, plotting, mending. He knows how tools get folded into jealousies. He speaks of balance in the language of a maker. Metal lends what it is given. It accepts bending, it remembers hammer blows. But if you try to make it more than it is, if you try to turn a compass into a crown, then it will not serve. It's a metaphor he can't help using, because his brain is greased with craft. You can almost see him remembering tempering, how quenching in oil or water can make metal spring or become brittle. That's an actual smithing fact tucked into his words. Tempering changes metal's hardness by controlled heating and cooling, and the smith's timing matters. Hephaestus warns Hera carefully. Treat the shoes with a steady hand, or their gift curdles into something else. Hera's laugh is small and private. It holds no mockery. You speak as if I have never done this before, she replies. You notice in that line a whole history. The time she has maneuvered, negotiated, and not always left tracks. Hephaestus nods, but his eyes flick to the cicada charm, as if it might be listening for more than movement. I made a safeguard, he admits. A small tether. Nothing to betray you, only to remind. He taps the charm. The sound it makes is like a pebble dropped into a deep well. It's not a punishment so much as a check. A way for the maker to know his work is not being misused. He leans forward then, voice dropping to that sort of conspiratorial rasp smiths get when they tell a secret about how the world was really put together. There are places the shoes will not go on their own, he says, and places they will take you whether you ask. You claim the steps, lady, but the path claims you too. The line sits between you like a suspended bead of molten gold, both beautiful and binding. You think of the peacock feathers in Hera's chambers, the eyes that watch, and remember how God's belongings always seem to carry their own loyalties. People in ancient times used household cult objects to anchor domestic life. An Athenian home might have a shrine to the hearth goddess Hestia because physical objects helped focus piety. In a similar way, Hephaestus has anchored his craft with a charm that is both practical and symbolic. He's the sort of maker who signs his work quietly, not with a flourish but with a constraint. Maybe that's why his offers feel like bargains. They're gifts that need tending. Still, you can sense a softer undertow. Hephaestus isn't cruel. There's a faint pride at play, like a parent lending a child a toy that could be marvel or weapon depending on how it's used. If you take them, he says at last, promise me something small. A smile quirks on his face that's more sincere than the grumble he wears like a badge. Tell me one thing you hide from Zeus. Not to blackmail, not to wound. Only so that my work isn't used for what I hate, spectacle. It's oddly intimate, this request. He wants a truth in exchange for the truth his hands produce. You feel the ancient weight of vows in that ask. Household secrecy has long been a currency in human relations. Hera's hand stills on the sandals. You notice for the first time how the corners of her mouth lift, soft, almost shy. She could refuse. Power could insist she needs no bargains. Instead, she meets Hephaestus' gaze and offers a pause that is more eloquent than words. She does not give the secret yet. She toys with it, lets it go round her like a thought bead. You can see the cogs engaging: calculation, memory, self-preservation. The request forces a consideration, and that is Hephaestus' point. You sometimes give away what you value most without thinking. Makers prefer intentions to be clear. Hephaestus laughs softly then, a metal sound that has warmth. "I knew you'd think," he says. "You were always thoughtful even when the throne made you look sharp. Take them then. But know this, the shoes will remember what you give them. Treat their memory well." He stands, the motion fluent and decisive, and offers the sandals to Hera as if offering a handshake. You feel the old, quiet gravity of an exchange, a crafted thing offered in return for a secret, a trade of human truth for crafted truth. It is intimate, practical, and utterly fitting for a workshop full of things that have been taught how to obey. A small, human aside curls up in you. Makers often ask for the story behind a commission because stories teach them how to shape the object. Whether modern craftspeople or ancient smiths, knowledge of purpose changes the product. Hephaestus is no different. In asking for a secret, he is simply asking for the context that will keep his work honest. Historians still argue whether myths like this encode real social practices. Did artisans actually demand something of patrons, or is this a poetic way to mark the moral of a story? You sense both possibilities here. The scene reads like both a literal barter and a mythic parable about accountability. Hera lifts the shoes, feeling the familiar hum, and for a moment the world narrows to two hands and one shared object. Her voice drops to a whisper you barely catch. "I will tell you when the time is right," she says. "But not now. Not here." Hephaestus nods, accepting the deferral like one who understands delay as a kind of consent. He's given the terms, she's accepted them for now. You breathe out. The forge noises, hammers, the soft creak of leather, the sigh of cooling metal, return to their rhythm. Hephaestus' grumble softens into the background, and you realize the exchange has already changed the tone of the night. A bargain has been made that is neither theft nor gift. It is a careful, made thing, like the sandals themselves. The sandals lie between them like a pact sealed in leather and bronze. Hera's hand brushes over their straps, as though smoothing the surface of a lake. You notice her fingers tremble, not from fear but from calculation. She weighs more than shoes. She weighs debts, affections, and the awkward tenderness that sits between herself and Hephaestus. A goddess who has ruled from Olympus for ages is, in this moment, a guest in her son's workshop. The shift in power feels almost ordinary, almost domestic. Hephaestus clears his throat, voice still gravelly with forge dust. "You'll test them here first," he says, and the tone is not negotiable. He gestures toward the center of the room, where the floor is worn smooth by years of hammerfalls and molten spill. A proving ground, blackened stone that has caught sparks of every invention he ever dared. Hera rises. She slips the first sandal on, then the second. For a moment nothing happens. She could be any woman fastening a buckle before stepping onto the street. Then the cicada charm quivers, wings catching the firelight. You hear a faint chitter, insect delicate, like a sound meant only for ears that believe. Her first step is hesitant. The stone doesn't shift, but your stomach does, as though her foot has dipped into another layer of gravity. With the second step the air folds, faint ripples shimmering outward. You catch your breath. She walks in circles, slow at first, then with the rhythm of someone learning a song half forgotten. The sandals hum, and the forge answers. Bellows puff without touch, hanging chains sway as if brushed by invisible hands. Hephaestus watches without blinking. His eyes are Smith's eyes, measuring, appraising, ready to judge if the creation resists its new master. After a dozen steps he grunts. "They know you," he admits. "That's rare. Usually they stumble a stranger, make them clumsy till they prove themselves. But with you they seem willing. You remember a line from Pausanias, the ancient traveler. He once described sanctuaries full of objects that recognized their rightful worshippers, doors that opened only to priests, altars that sang only during proper rites. Scholars debate if this was poetic metaphor or real ritual trickery, but standing here you sense that same aura. These sandals, too, are ritual objects disguised as footwear. Hera halts mid-step. The sandals drag her slightly forward, as if tugged by a leash. She steadies herself, eyes narrowing. "They want me to follow," she murmurs. Hephaestus nods. "That is their rhythm. They point toward meaning, not destination. You can resist, but resistance will fray you like cloth against a file." He offers a small demonstration. Taking a spare rod of bronze from his bench, he drops it onto the floor. The sandals twitch beneath Hera's feet, aligning themselves toward the rod as if it were a compass needle. "See," he says, "they hunger for intent. Drop a question in their path, and they will chase its answer." You think of oracles, Delphi's priestess breathing fumes, Didona's oak rustling with Zeus's voice. All of them methods to pry meaning out of silence. Perhaps these sandals are a personal oracle, built not of riddles but of steps. Hephaestus has forged a device that makes the act of walking into divination. Hera smiles faintly, though her gaze is sharp. "A compass," she says, "but one that points not north, but inward." "Exactly," Hephaestus replies. "They are honest to your desire, not to your map." For a moment the forge feels holy. Not the sanctity of temples with incense and marble, but the kind that hides in workshops, kitchens, any place where hands have made something that outlives them. Hephaestus steps closer, lowering his voice. "But remember, shoes wear out their wearers as much as wearers wear out shoes. You follow long enough, and they will leave part of themselves in your bones. Even gods are not spared that." The sandals glow faintly, as if to punctuate his warning. Hera flexes her toes, testing the weight. She looks at you, not as queen to servant, but as traveler to companion. "We may both have to learn their rhythm," she says softly. "And you realize you're already part of the bargain." The sandals shimmer like captured sunlight as Hera guides them toward the open sky. You trail behind her steps, half expecting sparks to spill across the marble halls of Olympus. But instead the shoes make no noise at all. Silent magic, which somehow feels more dangerous than thunderbolts. She moves to a balcony carved with swirls of vine leaves, one of those Olympian flourishes that makes you wonder if gods really ever touch tools, or if palaces grow themselves out of marble. Hera grips the balustrade, then releases it with deliberate calm. A deep inhale, a tightening of shoulders, and she steps off into open air. Your heart kicks as though it's your body falling. For a moment, gravity remembers itself, pulling her down, robe flaring, sandals gleaming. Then the hum returns, a resonant vibration that feels like standing near an enormous bell. The shoes catch the sky as though it's a second floor, invisible but solid. Hera rises. She doesn't so much fly as walk upward on an unseen stairway. The sensation is contagious. You feel your balance sway, the way you do when you watch a tightrope walker. The sandals respond to her steps like liquid memory, adjusting mid-stride. Each motion is a glide, each pause a chance for the world to reassemble beneath her. When she levels out, Olympus stretches below in miniature. Temples glow like chess pieces, clouds cling to mountain ridges like fleece. Hera tilts her head toward the east, and there, the glow of Troy, faint firelight flickering on the horizon. The sandals tug her toward it, hungry as Hephaestus warned. From here, you glimpse a scene that mortal poets would later describe. Chariots racing, walls glittering with bronze shields, the sea littered with ships like beetles. Homer's Iliad is centuries away, but the bones of the story are already written below. Heroes in dust, gods in disguise, and cities trembling with fate. Hera slows, hovering high enough to escape notice. Yet down there, in the smoke, a single warrior pauses mid-charge. He stares upward, squinting. To him, it's only a shimmer, like heat waves rising from stone. Still, you feel a chill, mortal eyes brushing against divine presence, almost recognizing what they're not allowed to. Some historians argue whether Greek gods were imagined as truly invisible or simply unperceivable unless they wished otherwise. Were mortals blind to them, or just distracted? Tonight, with Hera's sandals pressing against air, you sense the answer leans toward the latter. The shimmer is there, if one dares to notice. The sandals tug harder. Hera grips the air as though holding reins. "They want me closer," she mutters, but there's steel in her voice. She resists. You realize you're watching a contest, not goddess versus sandals, but desire versus restraint. Below, Troy's torches flicker like constellations fallen to earth. Hera studies them, eyes calculating, breath steady. For a heartbeat, you sense her longing, not for Troy itself, but for vantage, for power that comes from seeing without being seen. The sandals hum, eager to pull her into the fray, but she holds steady, queenly patience wrapped around dangerous curiosity. The night wraps around you like velvet. Hera finally turns back, sandals sighing in protest. She isn't ready to plunge into mortal chaos just yet. For now, she has learned enough, that the shoes can lift her beyond Olympus, beyond mortal sight, into a space where only gods dare balance. And you, still clutching your chest from that first step off the balcony, realize you're not sure whether the sandals carried Hera, or whether she carried them. Hera drifts down from the sky as if the air itself has agreed to cradle her, the sandals glowing faintly with each step. You brace yourself, expecting some wild stumble when her feet finally meet solid marble. But no, the shoes land her with the poise of a dancer, her robe swaying like a slow tide. For a goddess, such grace is second nature, but tonight it feels amplified, sharpened. She pauses, gazes at her own feet, and lets out the smallest laugh, quick, brittle, almost human. The sandals may belong to Hephaestus in craft, but you sense they are hers now in spirit. She tilts her chin, as if daring the night sky to disagree. From the shadows near the colonnade, a rustle interrupts. A dry scrape of sandals on stone, not magical ones this time, but plain leather. Out of the dark steps Hermes, casual as ever, winged cap tilted, caduceus leaning like a staff that's more for swagger than support. "Nice evening stroll?" he asks, and his grin gleams in the moonlight. You feel Hera stiffen. Hermes, the messenger who sees more than he admits. If anyone on Olympus could sniff out secrets, it's him. His sharp eyes glance down at her feet, and his grin widens. "New shoes," he teases. "I'd say Hephaestus has been busy again." Hera's reply is cool. "And what if he has?" "Nothing," Hermes shrugs, twirling his staff. "Just that sandals which hum like bees in spring usually aren't meant for long walks around the palace. Unless you've got business." Hermes' tone is playful, but underneath it you detect that sharpness, curiosity wrapped in humor. That's his trick, after all, to make every word sound like a joke, so you can't tell which part matters. Historical fact check. Hermes was indeed called Argifontes, the slayer of Argus, a reminder of the time Hera set the hundred-eyed giant to guard Io. Zeus sent Hermes to lull Argus to sleep and kill him, rescuing the girl. Since then, Hermes and Hera have danced an uneasy line, neither outright enemies nor friends. Tonight, you feel that history breathed between them. Hermes circles her slowly, his wings rustling. "You know, Hera, Zeus doesn't like surprises. Imagine if he found you borrowing toys from our favorite smith." Quirky tidbit. In some Roman retellings, Hermes was believed to invent dice and gambling. You can almost see that gambler's gleam in his eye now, as if Hera's secret is a game of chance he's eager to play. She doesn't flinch. Instead, she lifts her chin, voice level but laced with steel. "Tell Zeus if you wish. But ask yourself, Hermes, what do you gain by being his spy? He already sends you running errands like a servant. Do you really wish to carry more thunderbolts on your back?" For once, Hermes pauses. His smirk falters, just a flicker, but enough. Hera presses her advantage. "Better to say nothing, and keep watching. You enjoy watching, don't you?" There's silence, thick as honey. Then Hermes chuckles, a low ripple of sound. "Fair. Very fair. Watching does keep things interesting." He tips his cap, leans in close enough that you imagine you can feel his breath. Just remember, Hera, secrets have wings, and some of us know how to follow. With that, he fades back into shadow, wings catching moonlight once before vanishing. Hera exhales slowly, her composure unbroken. Yet you catch the tiniest tremor in her hand as she smooths her robe. Not fear, exactly. More the rush of having faced a sly opponent and won the first move. Historians still argue whether myths of the gods spying on each other were cautionary tales about court politics or simply dramatic flourishes. Either way, you've just witnessed it firsthand. A chess game in whispers, sandals versus wings, secrecy against slyness. Hera stands alone again, but you can feel her resolve tighten like a drawn bow. The sandals hum faintly, almost pleased. The sandals whisper against the marble as Hera resumes her quiet stride, though you sense her mind still buzzing with Hermes' grin. Secrets have wings. His words echo, unwelcome but sticky, like burrs clinging to a cloak. You imagine her muttering under her breath, though she keeps her lips composed. Hera isn't one to show cracks. The colonnades stretch into silence, their shadows deepening, and you almost think the palace itself holds its breath. But not for long, because Hermes never truly leaves when he says he does. He lingers, circling like a hawk, hiding behind laughter and shifting air. And sure enough, you hear him again. Not a step this time, but a sudden flutter, a sound like feathers brushing close. Then the faintest sparkle, a trickster's calling card, a glimmer of gold that dances across the floor, then vanishes. He's playing. You watch Hera's eyes narrow. She's not one to let herself be toyed with. Still, she doesn't rush. Instead, she steps slowly, deliberately, as though each stride declares, "I am queen here, and no trick will unsettle me." But you're not so certain. Those sandals hum louder now, like bees stirred from their hive. Hera's balance wavers, not visibly to any mortal eye, but you catch the hesitation, a shift in her weight. Almost as if the shoes sense Hermes nearby and respond with their own mischief. Quirky tidbit. Ancient storytellers loved painting Hermes as a thief, not just of cattle, as in Apollo's myth, but of dignity itself. They joked he could steal your sandals while you were still walking in them. Tonight, it feels like he's close to proving it. Hera pauses before a pillar, glancing at the moonlight cut across the floor. Then her gaze sharpens. There, in the pale beam, you notice it too, a shadow. Not her own, not the pillars, a fluttering silhouette of wings, moving though no body stands there. "Enough games, Hermes," she says softly, her tone like honey laced with iron. "If you have something to say, say it." The shadow flickers. Then, from the air itself, Hermes materializes, reclining lazily as though the marble beneath him were a couch instead of cold stone. His wings twitch like restless fingers. "I did say it," he replies, smirking. "Secrets have wings. And these shoes, they don't belong to you." "Borrowed things often prove more useful than gifts freely given," Hera counters. Hermes grins wider. "Useful, perhaps. But did Hephaestus tell you everything about them?" Her silence is telling. Hermes twirls his staff, its snakes glinting. "Of course not. He never does. The man crafts wonders, and then forgets to mention the bite behind the shine. Typical. Historical fact here. The Greeks did tell stories of Hephaestus building automatons, golden maidens who could think and move. Some scholars wonder if those myths were metaphors for his inventions, or even early imaginings of robots. If he could forge servants, what's a pair of mischievous shoes compared to that? "Why warn me?" Hera asks finally, eyes narrowing. "Do you expect gratitude?" "Not gratitude," Hermes says, rolling onto his side with the ease of a cat. "Entertainment. Imagine my delight watching Zeus thunder and roar when he realizes you've been sneaking around in someone else's gear. Oh, the drama. You almost laugh despite yourself. Hermes is nothing if not consistent." But then he leans forward, his grin dimming into something keener. "Still, you interest me. You always have. The way you plot, the way you hold Olympus together while pretending to tear it apart. If anyone can turn these sandals into more than toys, it's you. So I'll let you play for now." There's a pause, and the weight of that for now hangs heavy, like storm clouds on the horizon. Then, with a mischievous wink, he flicks his staff. Suddenly, Hera's sandals flare bright, and for a heartbeat, she vanishes, lifted a few feet, spun gently in the air, then placed down again as though nothing happened. The look on her face could scorch marble. Hermes laughs, clutching his ribs. "Oh, don't scowl so. Consider it a test drive." She steps toward him, eyes blazing. "Test me again, Hermes, and you'll wish Argus still had his 100 eyes to keep you awake at night." That lands. His grin falters just enough, though he masks it quickly. He tips his cap, wings flutter, and in a rush of air, he's gone again, this time truly gone. You exhale slowly. Hera does too, though she disguises it behind perfect posture. Historians still argue whether these myths of divine trickery symbolized human caution against gossip, theft, or even the unpredictability of fortune itself. What you know for certain is this: Hera just gained not only shoes of mystery, but also the watchful gaze of a trickster. And as the sandals hum beneath her, you can't help but wonder if they're laughing too. The sandals feel different now. You notice it in the subtle way Hera adjusts her stride, like someone testing whether the ground will hold beneath her. After Hermes' meddling, the shoes seem restless, pulsing with a hidden rhythm, as though eager to reveal more than Hephaestus ever confessed. The corridor narrows into a stairway that curls down toward the quieter heart of Olympus. Fewer torches burn here, and shadows thicken, blurring the marble into mystery. Hera walks with deliberate grace, though you sense her attention sharpened, every step a negotiation between power and caution. The sandals hum again, low but steady, and suddenly the marble feels less like stone and more like liquid beneath your awareness. For a moment, you imagine falling through it into some underworld workshop of Hephaestus where fire still glows in forgotten forges. The sensation passes, but the unease lingers. Quirky tidbit. In some lesser-known fragments, poets described enchanted sandals that could carry their wearer not just across the earth, but also through dreams. Imagine nodding off in a chair, only to find your shoes dragging you into somebody else's nightmare. Now that's the kind of malfunction you don't want. Hera pauses, tilting her head as though she heard something beyond your hearing. A faint ringing, like distant hammers on anvils, threads the silence. Then, unexpectedly, the sandals flare again, not in light this time, but in sensation. Hera stiffens. You sense her mind tugged elsewhere. And just like that, she's inside a memory not her own. The air thickens, your vision bending, until you find yourself peering through her perspective into Hephaestus' forge. Fire leaps high, throwing sparks like constellations. The god himself hunches over a half-finished project, those very sandals still glowing, wires of gold unfurling like veins. His muttering reaches your ears, half curses, half prayers. "Too much," he growls, slamming a tool against the workbench. "Too much spirit, not enough tether. They'll wander if I don't chain them right." Historians still argue whether these kinds of myths, divine artifacts imbued with will, were echoes of real concerns about tools gaining independence. After all, the ancient Greeks lived in an age of burgeoning craftsmanship, where the boundary between man and machine was just beginning to blur. The vision flickers, then collapses. Hera blinks, inhaling sharply, and steadies herself against a pillar. She realizes now that Hermes hadn't lied entirely. The sandals carry secrets, echoes of Hephaestus' own doubts stitched into their very fibers. But there's more. A strange aftertaste clings to her mind, like smoke that doesn't fade. You feel it too. The sense of something unfinished, a whisper that these shoes aren't merely transport, they're vessels of memory, maybe even of will. Hera straightens, lips pressed tight. The sandals pulse once more, as if mocking her resolve. For the first time, you wonder whether she borrowed them, or whether they borrowed her. She continues down the stairway, her steps slower now, as though testing whether the shoes obey. Each movement feels like a negotiation, and each hum a reminder that the magic has its own voice. It's almost funny in a dangerous way. Imagine buying new sneakers only to discover they came preloaded with the ghost of their designer. grumbling about how you're walking wrong. That's the situation here, except multiplied by divine pride and centuries of grudges. Hera finally reaches the base of the stairs. Here, in the quieter chambers of Olympus, the air is cooler, the light dimmer, and the silence nearly complete. Yet the sandals refuse stillness. They hum with intent, guiding her subtly toward an archway half hidden by shadow. She doesn't resist. Curiosity edges past caution. After all, if these shoes want to show her something, perhaps it's wiser to see than to deny. She steps through the arch. The sandals flare again, and suddenly the chamber stretches like a dream, walls unfurling into endless corridors of firelit forges. The smell of metal and smoke chokes the air, though this place doesn't exist in the waking palace. It's a memory, a labyrinth of Hephaestus' mind stitched into gold and leather. You realize with a shiver that the sandals have carried her not across distance, but into the forged thoughts of their maker. Hera lifts her chin. If this is a test, she will not stumble. The hammers ring louder, and in the glow you glimpse half-formed inventions stacked on pedestals. Gears that grind themselves, spears that twitch as though eager to strike, bronze birds frozen mid-flap. Every invention waits in silence, yet you feel their hunger to move. One pedestal holds a pair of winged anklets, similar to Hermes but rougher, unfinished. Another pedestal bears a cracked bronze mask, its eyes hollow yet strangely watchful. And at the far end stands a door of black iron, pulsing faintly, as if alive. The sandals hum, urging her forward. She hesitates only briefly. Then she walks, each step echoing like a declaration of sovereignty. The iron door looms larger. You feel the pressure mount, a vibration crawling into your bones. Hera places her hand on the handle, cold and sharp. The sandals flare, brighter than before. The forge labyrinth quakes. And then, just as she pushes, the vision collapses, throwing her back into the marble corridor of Olympus, chest heaving, hands trembling despite herself. The sandals quiet, their hum reduced to a satisfied purr. Hera exhales, steadying her heartbeat. Whatever lies within those memories, she now knows this. The shoes aren't mere tools. They're fragments of Hephaestus himself, carrying his frustrations, his genius, his warnings. And she must decide whether to master them or be mastered. You barely have time to catch your breath before Hera steadies herself and resumes walking. The sandals feel deceptively calm now, like a cat pretending to nap after shredding your curtains. But you know better. The quiet is a setup, the kind that makes you tense your shoulders without realizing it. As she glides back through the marble halls of Olympus, the sandals pull her. Not forcefully, just a subtle nudge in direction, the way a river suggests the path of its current. Hera lets them guide, perhaps out of curiosity, perhaps out of arrogance. After all, she is queen of the gods. Shoes, even magical ones, should bend to her, not the other way around. The hall opens onto a terrace, the kind poets like to imagine dripping with ambrosia-scented breezes and immortal blossoms that never wilt. But tonight it's quieter, almost solemn. A crescent moon hangs over the horizon, silvering the air. Hera steps forward, sandals clicking gently on stone. And then, without warning, the shoes spark again. This time the sensation isn't memory, and it isn't vision. It's speed. One blink and she's airborne. You feel the lurch in your gut as the sandals lift her clean off the terrace and propel her across the night sky. The marble palace shrinks behind, the constellations whirl closer, and the air stings sharp against your face. Hera doesn't cry out. She simply narrows her eyes and leans into the pull, letting the sandals drag her into the stars. Quirky tidbit. Some fragments of Orphic hymns actually describe Hera as wearing celestial shoes that allowed her to stir the firmament as a pond of mirrors. Most scholars think that was just poetic license. But if they could see her now, rocketing past Orion like a very angry comet, they'd reconsider. She arcs over the Aegean Sea, its surface silver under moonlight, the waves wrinkling like linen under the wind. Mortals far below toss in their sleep, oblivious to the Queen of Heaven streaking overhead like a streak of wildfire. She doesn't land, at least not yet. The sandals keep pulling, faster, higher, until even the sea curves beneath you, and the stars feel almost within arm's reach. You'd think this is exhilarating, but it's more unnerving. After all, she didn't ask to be launched like a mythological missile. Historians still argue whether these myths of divine flight were early attempts to describe astronomical observations. Was Hera's skybound dash here a dramatization of some wandering planet moving strangely across the heavens? Or was it simply a storyteller's way of explaining why the Queen of Olympus sometimes vanished from mortal eyes? No one knows, and tonight, you don't care. You're too busy holding onto your stomach. Finally, the sandals ease their pace. Hera hovers above a storm cloud tower, lightning flickering below like the heartbeat of some hidden giant. She looks down, regal even in chaos, and then the sandals tilt her gently downward. She descends into the storm. Rain lashes, thunder cracks, but the sandals keep her dry, a bubble of divinity wrapped tight around her. Lightning forks past her face, so close you smell ozone. Hera's eyes flash in reply, her power mingling with the storm until you can't tell where thunder ends and goddess begins. It's almost cinematic. Imagine standing at the center of a hurricane while wearing the smuggest grin you can muster. That's Hera right now, as the sandals settle her on the crest of a thundercloud. She stands steady, peering into the tempest below, and there, woven through the lightning, are images. Not memories this time, prophecies. A city wall crumbles. A golden chariot overturns. A child cries in triumph and in fear at once. The sandals glow brighter, showing fragments without explanation, like a broken oracle machine coughing up riddles. Hera frowns. She recognizes some of what she sees, glimpses of future wars, of alliances yet unmade. But the meanings shift too quickly, slippery as smoke. Still, one image lingers longer than the rest. A golden thread pulled taut across the sky, fraying at both ends. She doesn't know whether it represents power, love, or the fragile spine of Olympus itself. But she knows this. The sandals want her to see it. The storm calms. The visions fade. The shoes lower her gently through the clouds, carrying her back toward the mortal horizon. She lands lightly on a hillside dotted with olive trees, the earth soft under her sandals. Crickets hum, a stray breeze rustles the leaves, and for a moment everything feels disarmingly ordinary. Hera exhales, the kind of sigh you give when your roller coaster finally breaks at the end. But ordinary doesn't last long. The sandals buzz faintly, tugging her gaze toward a shadow among the trees. A figure waits there, tall, cloaked, and patient. Hera tilts her head, already knowing who it is before the figure steps into the moonlight. It's Hecate, goddess of crossroads, magic, and inconvenient midnight appearances. Her torches flicker with blue fire, and her threefold shadow stretches unnaturally long across the hillside. She doesn't smile. She doesn't bow. She simply looks at the sandals and then at Hera, as though calculating odds in a game Hera didn't agree to play. "Well," Hecate says softly, her voice like smoke seeping under a door. "Hephaestus gave you more than you bargained for, didn't he?" The sandals hum louder, as if acknowledging her words. Hera narrows her eyes, not in denial, but in challenge. Because whatever game the shoes are playing, she's not about to lose. Not to the sandals, not to Hephaestus, and certainly not to Hecate. Hecate steps forward, her twin torches throwing strange, shifting shadows that make the olive trees sway as if they're whispering secrets. Hera stands perfectly still, chin raised, shoulders squared, as if the sandals under her feet haven't just dragged her halfway across the heavens and back. You can almost feel the tension in the air, like when you're at a family gathering and someone mentions politics. You know something is about to spark. The sandals hum faintly, a pulse against Hera's skin, like they recognize Hecate and don't entirely approve. For a moment, you wonder if they're going to launch her skyward again, just to avoid this encounter. But no, they stay grounded, warm and alive, ready but restrained. "You feel it too," Hecate says, her eyes flicking downward toward Hera's feet. "They're not just shoes. They're choices." Her words roll slowly, like the clink of dice across a table you can't see. Hera arches a brow. They're tools. That's all. Hecate laughs softly, but it's the kind of laugh that doesn't make you feel at ease. Tools don't whisper when you sleep, Queen of Olympus. Tools don't remember things you never told them. And you can tell, Hera hears the truth in that. She doesn't like it, but she hears it. The sandals shiver once more, and this time, a faint shimmer unfurls across the grove, like a curtain lifting. Suddenly, Hera isn't standing on an olive-dotted hillside anymore. She's standing at a three-way path, each trail stretching into darkness. It's not literal dirt and stone, though. It's something deeper, more symbolic. One path glows faintly gold, one flickers storm gray, and one is shadowy and silent, barely visible at all. Quirky tidbit for you. Crossroads in ancient Greece weren't just practical, they were sacred. People left offerings of food, especially small cakes called hecatia, at them to appease Hecate. Some even buried protective charms where three roads met, believing spirits lingered there. So Hera standing at this phantom crossroad? That's about as on-brand as it gets. Hecate lifts one torch, pointing toward the gold-lit path. That one leads to power, the kind even Zeus will notice. But it comes with chains. Then she gestures with her second torch toward the storm-gray trail. That one leads to conflict. You'll burn half your rivals, but scorch yourself too. Finally, she lowers both torches and nods at the shadow path. And that one, no one walks it twice. Not even me. The air presses heavy against you. Even as a listener tucked up safe in your bed, you feel the weight of Hera's choice. She doesn't answer right away. Instead, she lets the sandals shift gently, almost testing each direction. They pulse differently when pointed toward each path, as though they've already walked them and know what waits at the end. Historians still argue whether these myths of crossroads were meant to dramatize actual political choices the Olympians faced, alliances, betrayals, or wars. Was this symbolic, or did they believe Hera literally had magical footwear that could rewire fate? The debate is ongoing, and honestly, standing here with Hera, you're glad it's their problem and not yours. Hera finally speaks. Her voice is calm, but you can tell she's calculating. And what do you gain by showing me this? Hecate tilts her head, shadows bending with her. Nothing I wouldn't gain by silence. But you? You gain clarity. The sandals thrum louder, impatient now. They don't want debate, they want movement. Hera knows it. You know it. Even the trees seem to know it, their leaves rattling nervously. Then Hera does something unexpected. She doesn't pick. She doesn't step onto any of the three paths. Instead, she plants her feet firmly on the ground, the heels of the sandals biting into earth that may or may not be real. You don't corner me, she says. Her voice has that crisp edge that could silence a roomful of gossiping gods. Not you. Not Hephaestus. Not fate. The vision trembles. The three paths flicker, fade, then collapse into the dark like embers swallowed by ash. The olive grove returns around her, quiet, grounded, real. Hecate watches with a kind of admiration hidden in her expression, though she doesn't admit it. Stubborn, she murmurs, a faint smile tugging at her lips. I almost like you better for it. The sandals quiet too, their humming softening into something like respect. Hera hasn't beaten them, not exactly. But she's reminded them she's no pawn, no passenger on their strange, unpredictable ride. Hecate steps back, her torches dimming. Then keep walking, Queen. But remember, crossroads never disappear. They wait. And with that, she melts into the shadows, leaving nothing but the faint smell of smoke and a rustling breeze. For a long moment, Hera stays rooted there, eyes fixed on the ground as though she can still see the ghost of those paths. Then she exhales slowly and begins moving again. The sandals obey, quiet now, though you suspect they're simmering beneath the surface, plotting their next reveal. The olive trees thin, the hillside slopes downward, and in the valley ahead, torchlights flicker. A mortal village, fast asleep, unaware that its future is about to intersect with a goddess wearing the most troublesome shoes ever crafted. You follow, half excited, half nervous, knowing the sandals aren't done yet, not by a long shot. The village lies nestled in the hollow like a lantern cupped by the land, roofs huddled close, smoke from banked fires curling lazily into the night. Hera slows as she approaches, the sandals keeping her steady, though you can sense the faint twitch in them, as if they've already sniffed out some mischief. At first glance, the place looks harmless: stone cottages, winding lanes, maybe a goat or two snoring in their pens. But mortals always have a way of hiding stories behind quiet walls, and Hera, being Hera, intends to pry. She moves silently down the path, and you notice something strange. The sandals don't just carry her, they cloak her. Her steps leave no sound, her presence stirs no dog to bark, no baby to whimper. It's as though the village has fallen into a deeper sleep the moment she entered. You shiver a little, realizing that to be unseen is sometimes more frightening than to be noticed. A lantern swings outside the small temple at the village center. Mortals, in their simple way, have left offerings there: bowls of grain, figs, maybe a splash of wine. Hera pauses, tilting her head at the modest altar. No golden statues, no ivory columns, just a rough-hewn stone marked with her name scratched in clumsy Greek letters. The sandals nudge her forward, almost as if bowing her toward it, and for a heartbeat you wonder if they're trying to humble her. Imagine being the queen of Olympus, used to marble shrines, and seeing your divinity honored with 2 figs and some barley. Quirky tidbit here: archaeologists have found countless small rural shrines across Greece. Simple setups like this, not grand temples. These were the everyday touchpoints of faith, where farmers or shepherds left food offerings, often more meaningful to them than any elaborate ritual in a city. Hera kneels, not because she needs the offering, but because the sandals insist, grounding her knees against the packed dirt. She touches the figs lightly, and in that instant, the sandals flare. Suddenly she can feel the prayers woven into the food, the whispered hopes of the villagers. Protection for their children, a healthy harvest, maybe a reprieve from that one neighbor who borrows too much grain and never pays it back. It overwhelms her for a second. Not because mortals are dramatic, but because they're so earnest. It's different from the scheming on Olympus, where every request is a veiled grab for leverage. Here, their voices ring with unvarnished need. The sandals pulse faster, translating those needs into sensations. A heavy stomach for hunger, a feverish brow for illness, a dry throat for drought. They make Hera feel the prayers. And you can tell, she doesn't like being forced into empathy. Not one bit. Historians still argue whether Hera was truly venerated widely in rural settings. Some suggest she was overshadowed by Demeter or Artemis in countryside worship, while others point to scattered evidence of household shrines like this one. The debate lingers, with both camps unwilling to concede. Hera rises, brushing the dust from her knees. She whispers, not loudly but with that sharp clarity that makes words slice the air. If you want me to feel, then you'll also feel me. And oh, the sandals listen. They send out a ripple, like when you toss a stone into water and the circles spread wide. Only here, the ripple touches every cottage. Suddenly, the villagers begin to dream, all at once, the same dream. You can see flashes of it spilling across the night. A woman dreaming of Hera's throne room, a shepherd seeing his sheep turn to stars, a child laughing as sandals bigger than her body whisk her across the sky. The dreams are shared, collective, as though Hera has folded them all into one tapestry of sleep. For you watching, it's breathtaking but unsettling. Mortals' private minds, stitched together without their consent. Hera seems satisfied, though, as if she's proven to the sandals she doesn't just absorb prayers, she can shape them too. One man stirs in his bed, sweat slick on his brow. He dreams of Zeus, not Hera. In his vision, Zeus looms massive, thunder in his fist. Hera narrows her eyes, and the sandals spark at her ankles. With a flick of her hand, she tweaks the dream. Zeus's thunder fades, replaced with a sputtering candle. Hera's silhouette grows taller, broader, until she towers, the dream reshaped to her liking. The sandals purr like cats pleased with their mistress. You can't help but wonder if the villagers will remember these visions when they wake. Probably not in detail, but the feelings. Yes, those will linger. They'll rise tomorrow strangely loyal to Hera, convinced she alone keeps the sky balanced above their fields. But here's the unsettling part. It isn't just loyalty born of devotion. It's loyalty born of intrusion. She's in their heads now, thanks to the sandals. Hera turns from the shrine, face unreadable. Maybe she feels triumphant, maybe unsettled, hard to say. The sandals, though, are buzzing as if they've tasted something addictive. You know they'll want more of this. She moves on, past sleeping homes, past the flicker of the shrine's lonely lamp. At the edge of the village, the sandals pause, heels biting into the dirt again. They're tugging faintly, not forward this time but upward, toward the sky, toward something vast. Hera sighs, looking back once more at the villagers. Their dreams pulse faintly in the dark, and she whispers almost to herself, "Remember me kindly, or else." And with that, the sandals flare, launching her not with the violence of earlier, but with a smooth lift, like a queen ascending a throne. You're carried with her, the cottages shrinking below, until the world itself becomes a patchwork quilt of light and shadow. She doesn't resist this time. She lets the sandals carry her higher, beyond clouds, where another horizon glimmers, something even Olympus hasn't dared to chart. And if your stomach flips a little at the sudden rush upward, don't worry. Hera's does too. She hides it better, but still, you know. The sandals lift you both into a strange altitude, higher than the clouds, where air thins and stars sharpen into points of light that feel close enough to pluck like grapes. Hera holds her poise, chin lifted, eyes narrowed, but you can sense her unease. Queens don't like being passengers, and the sandals are very much in control now. Below, the mortal village shrinks into a faint scatter of rooflines and fire glow. Above, constellations loom larger than life. You've probably traced them before on some summer night, but up here they're terrifyingly alive. Orion flexes his arm, Taurus lowers his horns, and the sandals pulse as though responding to some secret code written in the heavens. Hera steadies herself, though the wind that isn't really wind, more a kind of rushing pressure, tugs at her hair. You feel that odd tug too, like gravity no longer remembers which way is down. The sandals tilt toward a cluster of stars, and suddenly you're sliding not across sky, but into it. The constellations blur into a streaming path, a glittering roadway that no mortal eye could ever see. Each star thrums like a note in a hidden symphony, and the sandals are playing the melody. You half expect Hera to rage, to wrench herself free, but instead she murmurs, almost in awe, "Hephaestus, you sly creature. You mapped the sky." Here's your mainstream historical fact. Ancient Greek navigators really did rely on constellations for travel across the Mediterranean, memorizing the seasonal paths of Orion, the Pleiades, and others. The stars weren't just stories, they were coordinates. But Hephaestus, apparently, went a step further. The sandals contain not just power, but directions, a star map encoded into their very stitching. Every spark at Hera's ankles corresponds to a position in the sky, every flicker a shift along the celestial current. The sandals guide her to a glowing thread, a silver streak stretching like a ribbon across the darkness. You recognize it, though not as you've ever seen it. The Milky Way, only here it's less an abstract smear and more an actual road. Hera steps, or rather is compelled to step onto it. The surface hums under her sandals, firm and unreal at once. She hesitates, then tests her weight. The road holds. It stretches endlessly in both directions, bending gently, like a cosmic bridge arcing over the world. You can't help but think of it as the first real highway, long before asphalt and exit signs. Quirky tidbit. In some obscure traditions, the Milky Way was imagined as the milk of Hera herself, spilled across the heavens when she yanked baby Heracles from her breast in anger. Imagine that, an entire galaxy as a celestial milk stain. Tonight, she's literally walking on her own myth. The sandals quicken, tugging her forward with a rhythm that feels almost musical. Every few steps, a constellation flares brighter, and Hera's gaze darts to it like a queen taking stock of her courtiers. She sees Leo, her sacred lion, gleaming with particular ferocity, and you notice the faintest twitch of pride in her lips. But then she sees Zeus's eagle, Aquila, glowing fiercely overhead. Her jaw tightens. Even here, he intrudes. The sandals slow, as though sensing her mood. They guide her toward a smaller constellation, faint but persistent, the Pleiades cluster, the Seven Sisters. Hera pauses, studying it, and you remember the myth. Daughters of Atlas, pursued by Orion, saved by transformation into stars. Sisters, hounded, enduring. Hera's expression softens, though whether from sympathy or calculation, you can't quite tell. Historians still argue whether the Greeks truly thought of constellations as divine beings living in the sky, or merely as symbolic reminders of myths. Some scholars lean toward metaphor, others toward literal belief. Tonight, walking this glowing roadway, you'd be hard-pressed to call any of it metaphor. Hera walks on, the sandals gliding smoothly over the galactic surface. She doesn't stumble now. She commands each step with more confidence. The sandals hum approvingly, perhaps pleased that she's finally embracing their design rather than fighting it. But you notice something troubling. The further she walks, the dimmer the earth below becomes. It's not just distance. It's as if the sandals are tuning her out of mortal sight, slipping her into a wavelength only gods can occupy. And if mortals can't see her, can Zeus? The sandals may not just be gifts. They may be hiding places, shields against even Olympian eyes. You can almost hear Hephaestus's dry chuckle in the background. Hera pauses midway across the star road. She looks down, squinting at the faint smear of earth. For once, there's no anger in her face, only a flicker of loneliness. Mortals dream of gods, gods meddle in mortal lives, but rarely do the two meet halfway. Now she is quite literally between both worlds, a queen striding a bridge of starlight. The sandals pulse again, harder this time. They want her to keep moving, to reach something. A shimmer far ahead, where the Milky Way thickens into a radiant knot. You squint too, and realize it looks less like stars and more like a gateway, some kind of cosmic doorway forged from light itself. Your stomach twists. Doorways rarely mean rest. They mean thresholds, new dangers, and choices you can't undo. Hera must sense it too. She straightens her spine, tightens her jaw, and mutters, "If this is your little game, Hephaestus, you'd better pray I like the prize." The sandals flare brighter, almost smug, and quicken her pace. Step by step, you're pulled closer to that shimmering portal. The stars grow sharper, the roadway more solid, until you no longer feel like you're walking the sky, but crossing into somewhere else entirely. And though Hera looks composed, her grip on her own arms betrays the tension she won't admit aloud. Because queens don't flinch at doorways. Not even doorways made of stars. The sandals carry Hera, and by extension you, closer to the knot of light ahead. It is no simple shimmer now, but a latticework of energy, strands of starlight woven like threads on a loom. You half expect Hephaestus himself to step out with a hammer and wink, but this gateway is far stranger, more like the architecture of thought than stone or bronze. As Hera approaches, the sandals hesitate for the first time. They hover on the edge, tapping against the luminous threshold like impatient horses pawing at the ground. Hera narrows her eyes, studying the weave. "You made this," she whispers, "not to you, but to the absent smith. But why leave it hidden here?" When she finally steps through, the sensation is less of entering a place than slipping into another frequency. The stars behind blur and dim. The space ahead sharpens. You stand or float inside what feels like an endless workshop, though no forge fire burns here. Instead, tools glimmer like constellations themselves, suspended midair. Tongs the size of mountains, hammers crackling with blue flame, bellows that breathe sound instead of wind. You realize with a shiver that you're inside a memory, Hephaestus's imagination, captured and encoded into the sandals. This is the inner sanctum of the craftsman's mind, a secret workshop where his unfinished designs wait. Hera walks slowly, heels clicking softly on a floor that doesn't truly exist. Every few steps, an object swings into view, half-formed, glowing as if still molten. One is unmistakably a breastplate, scales of bronze curling open like flower petals. Another looks like a shield, its rim inscribed with a spiral of runes no mortal language could contain. She pauses before each, assessing, her queenly instincts never turning off. Mainstream historical fact for you. In Homer's Iliad, Hephaestus forges Achilles' shield, described in such detail that scholars consider it one of the most vivid ekphrases, verbal descriptions of art, in all of ancient literature. That same love of detail is in everything here, though you're the first mortalish observer to actually walk inside it. Hera pauses before an odd creation, a pair of wings but mechanical, feathered in bronze, joints laced with fine silver wires. They twitch faintly, as if sensing her presence. "Not for me," she murmurs, moving on. But the sandals tug her elsewhere. They know where they're going, guiding her toward a massive plinth in the center of the workshop. Upon it rests a single object, a chest, sealed with glowing rivets. Unlike the other artifacts, this one feels finished. Hera draws near, and you feel a pulse of unease. Quirky tidbit. Some later storytellers claimed Hephaestus once made a talking tripod that wandered around Olympus serving drinks to the gods. Looking at this chest, you can't help but imagine it might sprout legs and scuttle away at any moment. Hera rests her hand on the lid. The sandals flare, acknowledging the gesture. A seam of light appears, and slowly, the chest creaks open. Inside is no weapon, no armor. Instead, a pair of sandals gleam, identical to the ones she already wears. Or perhaps not identical. These are heavier, more ornate, their straps etched with what look like shifting constellations. They shimmer like they've been cut from the night sky itself. You realize what you're looking at, the prototype, or maybe the final version. What Hera wears now might only be a test model, a lesser draft. The chest holds the perfected creation, the true divine sandals. Hera stiffens. Queens don't like realizing they've been given second best. Her face hardens, then softens into calculation. If Hephaestus left this here, did he mean for her to find it, or to never know? Historians still argue whether myths of divine artifacts represent literal beliefs in God-made objects or symbolic metaphors for power. Were sandals of flight just poetic shorthand for influence and mobility? Walking through this workshop, you'd say metaphor doesn't cut it. Hera kneels, not in humility, but with predator's grace. She touches the second pair. The sandals she already wears pulse, almost nervously, as though recognizing their superior siblings. The workshop trembles faintly, as if the memory itself resists. But Hera doesn't hesitate. She slips one foot free and tries on a single sandal from the chest. The reaction is instant. Light sears upward, blinding, and the entire workshop shudders like a struck gong. The other artifacts rattle in their places, wings twitching, shields humming. The sandal fuses to her foot, locking into place. She gasps, then steadies herself. Her face glows, not just with reflected light, but with something fiercer, more personal. Triumph. The workshop dims, as though punishing her intrusion. Yet Hera stands taller, half shod in one old sandal and one perfected one. She flexes her ankle. The galaxy seems to answer. You feel the tension rise. She could leave now, sandals mismatched, or claim both and risk shattering whatever enchantment keeps this place stable. She hesitates, weighing. Even Hera senses some thresholds aren't meant to be crossed lightly. Still, you've watched her long enough to know. Queens rarely resist crowns, even when they burn. Her hand hovers over the second perfected sandal. The workshop flickers, sparks raining like stars torn loose. Somewhere in the deep recesses, a forge bellows, not with heat, but with warning. And you, caught in her momentum, know the next step will change not just her footing, but the balance of Olympus itself. Hera's fingers brush the edge of the second perfected sandal, and the entire workshop seems to groan. The plinth beneath it vibrates as though alive, bronze dust floating upward like motes in a sunbeam. You want to whisper, maybe don't. But of course you're only a passenger in her stride. She closes her hand, steady, queen-like, and pulls the sandal free. For a heartbeat, the universe holds its breath. Then light explodes outward, so dazzling it's almost painful. You stagger as the sandals she already wore dissolve into threads of starlight, reabsorbed by the prototype pair. Hera now stands shod in perfection, her feet anchored to weapons of destiny. The effect is immediate. No longer are her steps merely swift or buoyant. Now, when she shifts her weight, the entire cosmos seems to bend in anticipation. Hera takes a single testing stride, and the floor beneath her ripples like water. She takes another, and the workshop trembles with the sound of a smith's hammer, except Hephaestus isn't here to swing it. Mainstream historical fact. In ancient Greece, footwear was far more than utility. Sandals often symbolized status, identity, even ritual purity. In some sanctuaries, pilgrims removed their shoes before stepping onto sacred ground, as if acknowledging that the human body alone was insufficiently worthy. Here, Hera's new sandals are not about humility. They're a declaration of authority, so sharp it could cut. You notice the other artifacts reacting. The bronze wings tremble violently, feathers clinking like wind chimes. The unfinished shield rotates in its suspension, runes glowing brighter. Hera doesn't flinch. She turns in place, letting the sandals hum against the unseen floor. Then she speaks, not loudly, but with the tone of someone making a permanent note to herself. Hephaestus, you underestimated me. The sandals tug her once more, but this time they no longer guide cautiously. They surge, dragging her forward with the insistence of destiny. You're flung along as she accelerates toward the edge of the workshop, which has no wall, no door, just an expanse of glowing strands. She doesn't slow. The sandals punch through, ripping the fabric of memory wide open. And then you're out, back in open sky. The stars reel past at a terrifying speed. Hera is no longer gliding. She's slicing, cutting through constellations like a blade. You grip your metaphorical seatbelt as galaxies smear into arcs. She laughs, an uncharacteristic, almost wild sound, as the sandals blaze hotter. Quirky tidbit. Some Renaissance astrologers believed that footwear in dreams represented journeys not only across land, but through fate itself. If you dreamed of losing one shoe, it meant imbalance in destiny. If you dreamed of gaining new ones, it meant a divine upgrade. Well, congratulations. You're literally living inside the upgraded dream shoes of a goddess. The sandals finally slow, settling Hera atop a plateau you've never seen. It's not Olympus, though the air feels just as thin and crystalline. Around you, pillars of obsidian rise, and the ground beneath glows faintly, as if lit from the molten heart of the world. Hera looks around, brows raised. She doesn't recognize it either, which is saying something. A whisper drifts on the air, not in words, but in tones, the way a harp string hums when struck. Hera tilts her head. You realize the sandals have not only changed her movement, but her hearing. She's tuned now to vibrations ordinary gods never noticed. She kneels, touches the ground. The obsidian pulses back, like a heartbeat. Historians still argue whether myths like this, objects unlocking hidden realms, reflect real cult practices of mystery religions, where initiates believed sacred items revealed truths unseen by outsiders. Did Hera's sandals function like keys in a cosmic mystery school? The debate will never be settled, but here you are, standing on a plateau no mortal prayer book ever mapped. Hera straightens. She looks down at her perfected footwear with a half-smile, as though realizing she's only now glimpsing their true power. The sandals thrum softly, almost like a cat's purr, though with undertones of thunder. She flexes her toes, and the entire plateau shivers. For a moment, Hera closes her eyes, letting the rhythm course through her. And you feel it too. The sensation that space itself can be folded, not by brute force, but by walking the right path. The sandals don't conquer by speed, they conquer by rewriting distance itself. She takes one experimental step forward. Instantly, the obsidian pillars around her resonate, low and mournful, like a choir of stone. She takes another step, and the sound rises in pitch, harmonizing with the sandals' hum. You realize, with a strange chill, that she is conducting an orchestra of geology, using nothing but her walk. The plateau vibrates more strongly, cracks forming like spiderwebs. From within, light seeps upward, white-hot and uncontainable. Hera pauses, watching. The sandals pulse approval. She nods, as though agreeing to terms unspoken. Then, deliberately, she takes a third step. The plateau splits open with a roar. Lava does not spill out. Instead, a column of radiant energy bursts forth, so bright it makes the workshop's earlier glow seem like candlelight. Hera stands directly at its edge, her silhouette stark and magnificent. The sandals anchor her effortlessly, as though she were standing on calm marble instead of a world cracking beneath her. You realize what she's done. She's found a seam in creation, and with Hephaestus's perfected sandals, she's pried it open. A passage to where even Hera doesn't yet know. But her eyes gleam with the certainty that she will. And as she leans forward, preparing to step into the light, you know the stakes have just doubled. Borrowing shoes is one thing. Borrowing them to rewrite the map of existence? That's something even gods whisper about only in nightmares. The light is almost unbearable as Hera steps forward. You brace yourself for heat, for incineration, maybe for that you probably won't survive this moment finally cashing in. But instead, the brightness folds inward, rippling like silk drawn through a ring. The sandals seem to negotiate with the blaze, bending it around her form until it becomes a doorway instead of a furnace. Through it lies not chaos, but geometry, an entire realm made of interlocking patterns. Circles nested inside squares, spirals unfurling into lattices, stars tessellating like mosaics. Hera strides forward as though she's known this place all along, but you can sense her surprise. The sandals, however, hum with satisfaction. They've found their natural terrain. You blink. The patterns aren't just designs. They're alive, moving slightly as if breathing. A spiral contracts when Hera passes, then unfurls again behind her. She pauses, tilts her head, and the sandals pulse in time with the rhythm of the shapes. You realize, this is not merely a location, it's the mathematics behind existence itself. Mainstream historical fact. Pythagoras and his followers believed numbers had mystical power, that geometry was divine language. They whispered that ratios and harmonics formed the backbone of the cosmos. You're seeing that myth come alive, except Hera is no student in a chalk-dusted robe. She's the queen of Olympus, pacing across equations written in starlight. She tries a cautious experiment. She plants her heel firmly on a glowing circle. Instantly, the circle rotates, shifting entire clusters of patterns outward like gears in a clock. Hera raises an eyebrow but doesn't falter. She steps again, and another section moves. It dawns on you. The sandals are more than tools of travel. They're keys in a lock no one else can even see. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval manuscripts claim that Solomon owned a ring with geometric inscriptions, and with it he could command not only demons but the very architecture of creation. Imagine wearing such a ring, except it's strapped to your feet, and every stride redraws the cosmos like a sketchpad. That's Hera right now. The sandals glow brighter as she continues. Patterns shift, creating corridors, then dissolving again as if teasing her. Hera frowns, frustrated. "Show me what lies beneath," she murmurs. The sandals respond instantly, pulling her into a sharp leap. You're dragged upward into dizzying air as entire spirals unfurl beneath, like watching seashells crack open to reveal hidden chambers. She lands softly, if such a word can be applied to a goddess touching down on fractal infinity, on a new platform. This one feels more structured, less fluid. The geometry here has purpose, symmetry. At its center, a cube of light rotates slowly, projecting beams that slice through the patterns like searchlights. Hera narrows her eyes. "Memory," she says aloud. "Not mine. Not his. Something older." The cube responds, projecting images. Not myths, not Olympian gossip, but stranger visions. Titanic beings made of stone bending rivers with their hands. Winged figures carving mountains like loaves of bread. Entire cities built upside down beneath oceans of flame. You gasp. This isn't history. This is prehistory. The drafts before your world was finalized. Historians still argue whether Greek myths encoded fragments of even older traditions, echoes of Minoan lore, or Mesopotamian legends carried westward. Here, Hera is seeing a truth scholars only suspect: that myths are palimpsests, overwritten layers, yet never erased completely. She watches silently, lips pressed thin. The sandals vibrate, urging her forward, but she waits. She's parsing the lesson. And then she says something that makes your skin prickle. Hephaestus didn't design these for me. He designed them for this place. I was merely the first bold enough to wear them. The sandals hum in affirmation. Another projection flares to life, a corridor lined with bronze doors. Hera tilts her chin, recognition dawning. She takes one deliberate step toward it, and the cube dissolves, replaced by the actual corridor manifesting beneath her. Suddenly, you're standing on solid ground again, or as solid as interlaced light can be. Each door is engraved with different symbols. Some look like constellations, others like labyrinths. Hera stops at one marked with a spiral resembling a seashell. She places her hand against it. The sandals thrum, and the door melts away. On the other side, impossibly, is a beach. Sand so fine it glitters like powdered pearl, waves that crash in silence, foam curling like lace. Hera steps through, leaving the geometric realm behind, and you follow with hesitant relief. She crouches, scooping a handful of the sand. It doesn't slip between her fingers. Instead, it holds shape, like wet clay. She molds it absent-mindedly into a crescent, and the sea responds by curving its tide to match. Hera laughs softly, delighted. The sandals hum like proud teachers. Quirky callback. Remember how Egyptian women supposedly used crocodile dung for sunscreen? Well, here's Hera discovering the divine version of sun protection, shaping the actual tides so they bend away from her, keeping her perfectly dry no matter how close the surf creeps. Gods don't settle for sunscreen. They edit the ocean. But there's tension, too. You notice the sandals tugging faintly toward the horizon, where the waves grow darker, towering unnaturally high. Hera follows their pull, her expression sharpening. She walks until the sand becomes glass beneath her steps, and the sea stills entirely. The horizon peels open, revealing a void deeper than the night sky. She exhales slowly. So this is what he hid. The sandals glow a warning, but Hera doesn't hesitate. She steps into the void, and you're carried with her, downward, inward, as though plunging into the marrow of existence itself. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you realize, this isn't just Hera's borrowed errand anymore. This is a descent into the secrets Hephaestus buried so well that not even Zeus suspected. The descent feels endless, like falling through molasses lit by distant stars. Hera doesn't scream, doesn't flail. She simply lets the sandals guide the drop. You, on the other hand, are internally bargaining with every power you've ever half believed in, promising to floss daily if only you survive. The void is thick with pressure, humming as though 1,000 engines were running silently in the dark. Then, at last, the plunge slows. You land on a surface that isn't really ground. It flexes like stretched leather, luminous with veins of gold. Hera steadies herself, eyes narrowing. The sandals glow faintly, uncertain for the first time. Whatever lies here is not their natural domain. They're intruders. You look around. In the distance loom colossal shapes, half visible, like statues wrapped in fog. As the haze shifts, you see them more clearly, giant figures slumped in silence, bound by chains of bronze and stone. Their faces are serene, almost peaceful, but their sheer size makes your breath catch. Titans. Hera exhales slowly. So this is where they're kept. Mainstream historical fact. In Hesiod's Theogony, the Titans, the primordial beings who ruled before the Olympians, were overthrown and cast into Tartarus, a pit beneath even Hades' realm. They were imprisoned there for eternity, guarded by monstrous beings. What Hera is seeing now fits that myth almost too perfectly. She steps closer, and the sandals react nervously, vibrating like a horse resisting the reins. They don't want to be here. Hera ignores them. She lifts her chin, eyes fixed on one titan in particular, a woman with hair like twisted roots, her lips faintly parted as though whispering in sleep. Mnemosyne, Hera murmurs. Memory herself. You swallow. The Titaness who gave birth to the Muses, who embodied remembrance. If she's bound here, then perhaps the strange projections Hera saw earlier were fragments of her power, leaking into the sandals' reach. Quirky tidbit. Some late antique writers claim Mnemosyne's river was a counterpart to Lethe, the river of forgetting. Initiates in mystery cults could choose whether to drink from Lethe, to forget past lives, or from Mnemosyne, to remember everything. Imagine a cosmic buffet line, eternal amnesia or eternal memory, your pick. Hera is standing in front of the source itself. She hesitates, then kneels. The sandals flicker in distress, but she presses her palm to the Titaness' bronze-bound wrist. The veins of light pulse in response, sending a tremor through the void. Mnemosyne's eyelids flutter. A deep hum fills the air, words forming not through sound but vibration. Daughter of the sky, why do you tread where even gods fear? Hera doesn't flinch. Because I am tired of forgetting. I want the whole story. The Titaness chuckles, a sound like mountains shifting. And what will you do with it, queen of jealous fires? Hera's eyes harden. I will not be diminished. The sandals blaze suddenly, interrupting. A flood of images pours through them. Visions of Hephaestus hammering in his forge, sparks flying into constellations. He's arguing with unseen figures, his voice muffled by the roar of bellows. You catch fragments. Too dangerous balance must hold she must never know. Historians still argue whether Hephaestus was seen as entirely loyal to Olympus, or whether his outsider status gave him secret sympathies. Was he the obedient smith, or was he quietly building safeguards even the gods couldn't override? Hera's glimpse now tips the scales toward the latter. He wasn't simply creating gadgets. He was designing locks, keys, and vaults for truths too volatile for anyone else. The visions end abruptly. Hera staggers, pressing her temples. Mnemosyne watches, eyes glinting faintly, then sighs. The sandals are fragments of my gift, stolen long ago by the smith. He bound memory into motion, turned recall into a path you could walk. Clever boy. Dangerous boy. Hera's mouth tightens. Then he betrayed me, too. The Titaness doesn't reply. Instead, she shifts slightly, and from her chest emerges a small sphere of light, drifting toward Hera. It hovers just above her hand, pulsing gently. This is mine, Hera asks. No, Mnemosyne answers. It is yours to bear, but never yours alone. Memory cannot belong to one being. It binds all who have ever lived. Hera hesitates, then cups the light. The sandals flare in protest, but it's too late. The sphere dissolves into her, flooding her veins with glow. Her eyes widen, and you feel a shock run through you as well, as if her newfound memory is spilling into your bones. Suddenly you see flashes. Hera cradling a newborn Ares, Zeus laughing thunder at their side. Hera standing alone in a temple, priests weaving garlands around her image. Hera secretly whispering advice to mortal queens, nudging dynasties like chess pieces. These aren't myths, they're memories intimate and unpolished. Hera gasps, steadying herself. I see it now. The sandals weren't given. They were borrowed, yes, but not from Hephaestus. From her. She gestures at Mnemosyne. Hephaestus only reshaped them. You blink, trying to process. So the sandals are really fragments of Titan memory, stolen and repurposed by a cunning smith? Suddenly the whole journey feels less like a divine errand, and more like theft unraveling its own consequences. Mnemosyne's voice rumbles again. Be wary, child of Kronos. Memory liberates, but it also binds. What you carry now cannot be unseen. Hera stands, regal even here. Then I'll make sure no one ever chains me again. The sandals, reluctantly, resume their glow. They lift her gently off the golden ground, as if eager to leave this dangerous vault behind. Hera doesn't resist. She spares one last glance at the slumbering titans, then whispers, "Let them keep sleeping." For now. The void begins to collapse upward, spiraling into light. You're pulled along, dizzy but awestruck. Hera has gained more than she bargained for, an inheritance Hephaestus tried to disguise, a weapon made not of bronze or fire, but of unflinching recollection. And as the glow swallows everything, you can't help but wonder. What happens when the goddess of marriage, already sharp and proud, suddenly remembers everything the world tried to make her forget? You surface into blinding light, air whipping across your face like a sudden storm. Hera steadies herself mid-flight, the sandals glowing so brightly you could read a novel by them. But she isn't rushing back to Olympus just yet. No, her expression is distant, far more haunted than triumphant. She drifts toward a jagged ridge, a place where the air feels sharp and thin, and lands silently. You stumble after her, boots slipping on shale, lungs aching with altitude. She ignores your fumbling, standing as still as a statue, her gaze fixed on the horizon. When she finally speaks, her voice carries an edge. So he forged them from stolen power. Not a gift at all. Not protection. Just another chain in disguise. You're tempted to joke that it's a pretty glamorous chain, but you bite your tongue. Hera's fury has a gravity to it. You don't want to be flattened. Mainstream historical fact. In Greek mythology, even the gods often relied on artifacts stolen or borrowed from earlier beings. Zeus's thunderbolt, for instance, was fashioned by the Cyclopes after the Titanomachy. Poseidon's trident also traces back to primordial powers. The Olympians built their rule on borrowed tools, reinforcing Hera's point. Hephaestus wasn't unusual for repurposing Titan relics. But doing it behind Hera's back? That's where betrayal slithers in. The sandals twitch beneath her feet, like nervous birds. Hera doesn't step forward. She waits, as though expecting Hephaestus to materialize in front of her and explain himself. But the ridge remains silent. Then you hear it, faint clinking, like hammer on anvil, echoing through the stone beneath your feet. Hera tilts her head, eyes narrowing. He's already watching. He knows I know. A gust of wind knocks grit into your eyes. When you blink, the world shifts. The ridge stretches like molten glass, reshaping itself into an enormous forge platform. Anvils tower overhead, hammers float suspended in midair, and the whole space burns with orange heat. The sandals pulse wildly, home ground. You've been pulled straight into Hephaestus's workspace. He doesn't appear immediately. Instead, a dozen automata scuttle into view. Bronze maidens with blank faces and jeweled joints, carrying trays of molten ingots and tools that clink with eerie precision. You've heard of them. Hephaestus was said to have built mechanical servants, some of the earliest robots in mythology. Quirky tidbit. Some ancient commentators joked these bronze girls even gossiped, which technically makes them the first chatty AIs. The maidens halt in perfect symmetry. Then, from behind an enormous cauldron of glowing ore, Hephaestus himself emerges. Limping, soot-stained, shoulders broad as boulders, his eyes shine brighter than the forge flames. He regards Hera without bowing. You shouldn't have gone that far. Hera doesn't flinch. You stole from Mnemosyne. You stole from me. Explain yourself. Hephaestus sighs, dragging a rag across his scarred hands. I shaped what was already loose in the world. Fragments of her power drifted, unanchored. Without binding, they would have shredded mortals' minds, drowned them in half-remembered eternities. I put it to use. I gave it purpose. Hera steps closer, firelight flickering across her face. You gave it to me, and you never told me what it was. Historians still argue whether Hephaestus was portrayed as malicious or simply pragmatic. Some myths paint him as bitter, lashing out at gods who mocked him. Others frame him as the ultimate craftsman, neutral and cold, serving whoever asked. Here, though, he sounds almost paternal, like a blacksmith explaining to a child why a sharp tool is dangerous. I didn't tell you, Hephaestus admits, because you'd use it as a weapon. And once memory is a weapon, there's no end to what it cuts. Hera's lips curl into a smile that isn't remotely warm. You're right about one thing. I will use it. She lifts her hand, and the glow of Mnemosyne's gift bursts forth. The forge trembles, visions rippling through the air. Snapshots of gods plotting, lovers quarreling, mortals building temples. The automata freeze, their mechanical eyes flickering as if overwhelmed by too much data. Hephaestus himself grimaces, bracing on his hammer. You see, Hera hisses. The truth was mine all along. You only delayed me. The forge heat thickens, metal sweating in the flames. Hephaestus steadies himself, then mutters, Be careful, Hera. Memory has no mercy. It doesn't edit. It doesn't forgive. The sandals flare brighter, dragging against her will, as if urging retreat. Hera clenches her jaw, resisting them. But you notice something else. The light in her eyes is so intense, it almost looks painful. Memory isn't just empowering her, it's burning through her, whether she admits it or not. For a moment, you imagine Hera as an overclocked machine. Too much energy pumping through circuits never meant to handle it. Will she withstand it? Or will the very clarity she craves break her apart? She doesn't seem worried. She steps closer to Hephaestus, her voice calm but razor-sharp. You borrowed her gift. You thought you could tame it, but it was always mine to reclaim. You built your empire on my ignorance. That ends tonight. The forge groans, sparks raining from invisible rafters. The automata back away, trembling. Hephaestus stares at her, eyes shadowed with a craftsman's grief, like watching a tool he forged now sharpened against him. And you, stuck in the corner, whisper to yourself, Yep, totally doomed. The forge doesn't collapse, though you swear it should. Instead, the heat presses against you like a second skin, suffocating, relentless, until your eyelids sweat. Hera and Hephaestus stand locked in that molten stare-off, neither blinking, neither yielding. Then the sandals pulse again, harder, like frantic wings. Hera staggers, one foot dragging forward despite her will. Hephaestus notices, his lips twisting. Ah, he murmurs, you've reached the limit already. You glance down. The sandals aren't glowing gently anymore, they're cracking. Fissures run along the straps, leaking golden light like a broken lantern. Whatever Mnemosyne gave is straining against its container, begging to burst. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Greeks often warned that divine gifts were double-edged. Pandora's jar, sometimes mistranslated as a box, held both hope and calamity. Perseus's helm of invisibility came with the risk of becoming lost between worlds. The sandals follow this pattern, tools of wonder with built-in danger. Hephaestus taps his hammer against an anvil, and the sound reverberates like a gong. Do you think I built those for eternity? They're a vessel. Temporary. You weren't meant to dive so deep into memory. Mortals break from a single glimpse. Even you will blister, Hera. But Hera doesn't retreat. She leans into the sandal's light, shoulders back, chin raised. Then I will blister gloriously. You wince. Pretty sure blistering isn't a solid long-term plan. The forge shifts around you again, stone morphing into slabs of polished obsidian, flames narrowing into tall, candle-like pillars. Each pillar holds an image inside, scenes flickering like film reels. You recognize some. Zeus charming Europa in bull form, Athena springing from his head, Persephone reaching for a narcissus flower just before Hades snatched her. They're memories. Not Hera's, not yours, but the collective past of the gods themselves. The sandals hum, and suddenly you hear whispers. Not just voices, crowds. Every prayer ever offered to Hera, murmured simultaneously. Some plead for children, some for vengeance, some for justice in broken marriages. The sheer noise makes you stumble. Quirky tidbit. In certain Greek regions, Hera was worshipped more than Zeus when it came to oaths of fidelity. Couples pledged loyalty at her altars, tying her directly to human drama. You're listening now to the audio archive of that devotion, and it's deafening. Hephaestus grips his hammer tightly, his knuckles white. You're not channeling memory, Hera. Memory is channeling you. Do you understand? You're becoming its mouthpiece, not its master. Historians still argue whether Hera was ever truly a goddess of memory herself, or if later poets retrofitted that association to align her rivalry with Mnemosyne's domain. Was she jealous of Mnemosyne's proximity to Zeus? Or did she genuinely covet memory as a weapon? Either way, tonight she isn't debating footnotes, she's living it. Hera ignores him, turning instead toward you. Her eyes gleam like molten coins. Do you hear them? Do you feel them? They remember everything. They remember me. The whispers crescendo, crashing into a single phrase, Queen Eternal. Over and over, chanted in countless accents. Hera smiles, radiant, but there's strain in the edges of her expression. The sandals fracture further, sparks snapping at your ankles. You leap back, half expecting them to explode. Hera doesn't move. She seems to welcome the imminent eruption, arms raised like a conductor at the climax of a symphony. Then abruptly the forge cools. The flames die to embers, the whispers choke into silence. You look around, heart hammering. What stopped it? A new voice. Feminine, calm, but firm enough to silence the world. That is enough. The air thickens with honeyed light, softer than Hephaestus's forge fire. From the shadows, a tall figure glides forward, her eyes deep as night, her gown stitched with stars. Mnemosyne herself, the Titaness of memory. You hadn't expected her to show up in person. Hera stiffens, jaw clenched. Hephaestus bows his head ever so slightly, though his body language screams reluctance. Mnemosyne's gaze rests on Hera, unblinking. Borrowed gifts rarely bring peace. You were what was never yours to wield. Do you see now why I did not place it in your hand? Hera's voice sharpens, brittle but blazing. Because you feared me. Mnemosyne shakes her head slowly. Because you already carry enough weight. Memory adds nothing but burden. You think you'll be stronger, but it only carves scars deeper. The sandals flicker, torn between obedience to Hera and loyalty to their true origin. You feel the tension like a rope about to snap. Hera laughs, though it's a strained, almost frantic laugh. Then watch me turn burden into throne. Mnemosyne tilts her head, eyes shimmering with something between pity and warning. Or watch it consume you. The forge groans again, but this time, it isn't Hephaestus reshaping it. It's memory itself, rippling outward. The obsidian pillars collapse, scattering glowing fragments across the ground like shards of mirrors. In each shard, you glimpse flickers of lives, ordinary mortals cooking, farming, whispering to children. Billions of forgotten moments now cracked open like eggs. The weight of them all presses into you, heavy as lead. You barely manage to stay upright. Hera, though, stands defiant in the storm, daring it to break her. And in that moment, you realize something unsettling. The sandals aren't failing. They're transforming. They aren't tools anymore. They're evolving into something alive. The sandals throb like hearts now, beating in sync with Hera's pulse. Each beat shakes the forge, rattles your ribs, makes sparks rain from the ceiling. You swear the straps slither like living veins, tightening around her ankles, binding her not as a borrower, but as a host. Hera tilts her head back, hair spilling like dark waves, and the sandal's glow shoots skyward. Not skyward, exactly, through the ceiling, through Olympus, through everything. It pierces memory itself, a signal flare into the vault of what was. Mnemosyne doesn't flinch. She raises a single hand, palm outward. The glow bends around her, as if light itself respects her refusal. You meddle with echoes you cannot hold, she warns, voice soft but firm. Hera glares. You hoard memory as though it belongs to you alone. Why should you decide what endures? Mainstream historical fact. In Hesiod's Theogony, Mnemosyne is mother to the 9 muses, goddesses of art, history, poetry, and more. She's literally the fountainhead of creativity, because to the Greeks, memory and inspiration were inseparable. Hera's challenge tonight is more than a squabble. It's a direct swipe at the foundation of cultural legacy itself. The forge shakes, and Hephaestus finally intervenes. He slams his hammer down. The noise blasts your ears, nearly buckles your knees. Enough, he snarls. Take this fight outside my forge. I built those sandals, and I won't watch them turn into a war I didn't sign up for. But the sandals don't listen to their maker. They peel away from Hera's skin for a heartbeat, hover in the air like wings, then slam back onto her feet harder than before. You almost hear them whispering, though it might just be your brain frying in the heat. Quirky tidbit. In certain myths, shoes and sandals weren't just accessories, but powerful symbols of freedom or bondage. In Roman tradition, freed slaves received shoes as a mark of liberty. In the Hebrew Bible, Removing a sandal could seal or void a contract. Tonight, Hera's sandals are both prison and crown, freedom bound so tightly it hurts. Mnemosyne steps closer, weaving her fingers through the air. The shards of broken obsidian pillars lift, floating like black feathers. They orbit Hera, showing scenes in rapid succession. Hera weeping when Zeus strayed, Hera hurling curses at rivals, Hera saving brides in childbirth, Hera scorned by mortals who adored Aphrodite more. Each image hammers Hera's pride, but she doesn't waver. Yes, she breathes, voice shaking. All of it is mine. Every betrayal, every prayer, every scar. Why should memory only sing of Zeus's thunder? Let it sing of me. Historians still argue whether Hera was ever intended to be a figure of empowerment or caution. Was she the protective goddess who fought for wives and women, or the bitter queen consumed by vengeance? Her dual reputation echoes here, embodied in the shards swirling around her. The sandals surge brighter, feeding on her resolve. Mnemosyne narrows her eyes. Then you've chosen weight over peace. The forge floor cracks. Lava light bursts through the fissures, though you suspect it isn't lava at all. It's pure memory, molten recollections too dense to stay buried. You teeter, arms windmilling for balance. Hera stands steady, almost exalted. Hephaestus growls, glaring at both women. I won't have Olympus undone because one goddess craves applause. He lifts his hammer again, ready to smash the sandals themselves if it comes to that. But Hera sees him and laughs, not cruelly, but with something like triumph. You can't destroy them. You made them too well. And for once, Hephaestus looks uncertain. The sandals suddenly project an image into the air, vast as the dome of the forge. Not a god, not a titan, but you, a mortal. You freeze, throat tightening. The vision shows you trudging through time, watching gods and heroes, remembering everything. Hera's eyes lock onto you, burning. See, even mortals are witnesses. Memory isn't just for gods or titans. It belongs to everyone who dares to hold it. Your knees buckle under the weight of her words. The sandals glow lances into your chest, hot and cold at once. Suddenly you feel every step you've taken since this journey began, every whispered aside, every quip you tossed into the dark. It's too much, like drinking oceans through a straw. Mnemosyne lifts her hand again. Release the mortal. They aren't built to carry this. Hera doesn't move. If they survive, they prove my point. Hephaestus swears under his breath, stomping forward. He plants his hammer against your chest, not striking, but shielding, creating a barrier of iron between you and Hera's radiance. The heat lessens. You gasp, gulping air like it's water. Mnemosyne steps closer still, her star-stitched gown brushing the forge floor. Her voice softens, almost kind. Child, you don't need to drown in what isn't yours. Let me take it back. The sandals flare violently, resisting her pull. Hera screams, not in pain but in defiance. Her voice echoes like thunder trapped in a jar. No, if memory belongs to everyone, it belongs to me most of all. The forge shudders. The sandals pulse. The shards orbit faster. And you, caught between Titanus, Smith, and Queen, realize the choice might fall to you, not them. Do you stand with Hera's hunger for remembrance, or Mnemosyne's call for release? The sandals seem to wait, as if even divine artifacts want your vote. You barely have time to breathe before the forge erupts into motion. Shards of obsidian swirl around like storm clouds, carrying memories too dense to contain. The sandals flare, projecting beams of gold and white that slice through the shadows. Every pulse is a heartbeat, every flash a lifetime. You feel your chest tighten. Somehow, you are no longer merely a witness. You are part of this flow, your consciousness drawn into the currents of divine memory. Hera takes a step forward, sandals blazing. Each stride bends the shards and streams into alignment, forming paths like bridges across memory itself. She moves with purpose, reclaiming fragments of herself scattered across time, space, and myth. The Titaness Mnemosyne follows, her presence calm yet resolute, tending to the torrents of recollection, preventing them from tearing apart the fragile weave of cosmos. Mainstream historical fact. Greek mythology often portrays gods interacting with human memory indirectly. Oracles, temples, and priestly recountings acted as vessels of remembrance, preserving deeds of heroes and the caprices of gods. Hera here isn't just walking, she's reclaiming the narrative itself, shaping history with each step. You notice details that make your head spin: small golden motes, human memories, prayers, forgotten vows, lifting from shards and flowing toward Hera. She absorbs them seamlessly, integrating mortals' recollections into her consciousness. It is not dominance, it is an intricate weaving of past and present, divine and human. Quirky tidbit. Some scholars later claimed that early Greek gods borrowed stories from local deities when forming their myths, suggesting memory was literally passed along like a footnote. Here, Hera is literalizing that metaphor, physically stepping through history, folding memory beneath her feet. The sandals pulse violently, struggling to contain the massive influx. Sparks leap like fireflies, illuminating the forge's immense structure. Hephaestus stands close, hands tight around his hammer. He doesn't strike. He's guarding, restraining, or perhaps praying it doesn't all collapse. You can't tell which. Hera glances at him, expression unreadable. Hephaestus, you built the vessel, but I will choose its contents. Not fragments, not secrets, everything. Mnemosyne interjects softly. And yet, even in choosing, you cannot escape consequence. Memory is not simply gained, it weighs and it binds. Hera's gaze hardens. Then I will carry the weight. I will bear it as a queen bears a crown. Let it crush me if it must. Historians still argue whether Hera's reputation as jealous or vindictive overshadows her protective and empowering qualities. In this crucible of memory, she embodies both, fierce, proud, unyielding, and unflinching in the face of consequences. The forge vibrates, shards orbiting faster, images flickering, betrayals, alliances, divine arguments, mortal quarrels. The sandals flare brighter, brighter, until the very light seems like liquid metal, dripping over the edges of reality. You stagger, grasping for grounding. You have never felt so small, yet so intrinsically linked to cosmic events. Hera lifts her arms, and in a sweeping motion, the shards converge into a single luminous sphere, larger than you, spinning with infinite recollections. She steps forward, and the sandals' glow aligns perfectly, embedding the sphere into her steps. Each stride now directs the flow of memory, controlling not just fragments, but the currents themselves. Quirky callback. Remember those bronze automata Hephaestus built? Their inert forms now rotate lazily around the sphere, observing, perhaps learning, perhaps recording. Even machines of myth watch as Hera becomes something greater than herself, a conduit for collective memory. She pauses mid-step, and the sphere hovers just above the sandals, thrumming with radiant power. Mnemosyne floats close, her voice calm, almost tender. Do you understand what you've taken? You carry not only your memories, but those of mortals, gods, and titans alike. One misstep. Hera smiles, not cruelly, but resolutely. I understand. That is why I cannot step back. I will hold it all. I will endure it all. The forge grows silent. Even the shards freeze midair, caught in the intensity of her will. Hephaestus lowers his hammer, realizing the moment has passed beyond his control. The sandals, once mere tools, now seem to pulse in sympathy with her very heartbeat, binding her to the sphere of memory as though she and it were one. You feel the weight too, as if some part of you has been absorbed into the flow. You cannot escape it, but you do not wish to. There is awe, terror, and a strange clarity. Hera is not merely reclaiming history. She is asserting it, claiming dominion over remembrance itself, standing above both gods and mortals. And in that moment, you realize the sandals were never just borrowed, they were catalysts. The true power lay not in Hephaestus's forge, but in Hera's courage to wield what others fear. The forge trembles one last time. Sparks drift like fireflies caught in a gentle wind. The shards of obsidian that have been orbiting Hera coalesce into a halo of muted light. The sphere of memory hovers above the sandals, radiating warmth and knowledge in equal measure. You can feel it, every life, every secret, every whispered prayer, all contained in the pulse of her steps. Hera lifts one foot and places it deliberately forward. The sandals hum in approval, adjusting, molding themselves to her intent. She moves slowly now, purposefully, each stride weaving memory seamlessly into herself. You feel the rhythm, an almost musical cadence, as past and present interlock beneath her feet. The forge seems to hold its breath, waiting for what comes next. Mainstream historical fact. The Greeks often depicted Hera as both a protector and a punisher, a goddess capable of immense grace and terrifying justice. Her duality is perfectly mirrored here. She is absorbing what is tender and cruel, mortal and divine, holding it in her being without flinching. Mnemosyne floats nearer, her voice calm but layered with warning. You have claimed much, Queen of Olympus. But remember, memory is not a burden to wield lightly. Each step leaves traces, each choice echoes. Hera doesn't respond verbally. Instead, she raises her arms, and the sphere spins faster, until light sprays outward in arcs of brilliance. The shards align into bridges and pathways, forming what looks like a lattice connecting past, present, and potential futures. Her stride is steady, almost trance-like, every motion precise yet effortless. The sandals are no longer instruments. They are extensions of her will, conduits for something far larger than the forge, far larger than Olympus itself. Quirky tidbit. Ancient sources occasionally attribute walking on memory to divine figures. Think of river god myths where paths were said to appear only under a deity's feet. Hera's sandals are the most literal version of that concept, making the abstract tangible, her steps literally reshaping what is remembered and what is forgotten. Hephaestus steps back, silent now. Even his forge can't compete with this demonstration. His eyes soften slightly as he watches Hera. The Queen of Gods, long scorned or underestimated, moves with a clarity no one had anticipated. She is both scholar and general, archivist and warrior, standing at the apex of cosmic authority. Historians still argue whether myths about Hera's temper overshadow her wisdom. In this crucible of memory, you see both sides fully integrated. Fury tempered by insight, pride balanced with reverence. She doesn't just reclaim what was stolen, she masters it. A hush falls over the forge. Even the automata, previously mechanical and inert, appear attentive. The shards of light pulse in anticipation. And then Hera takes the final step. The sphere merges into her completely, bathing her in pure, shimmering luminescence. The sandals flare one last time, their glow a crescendo, before settling into a soft, steady radiance. She exhales, shoulders relaxing for the first time in what feels like eons. Mnemosyne regards her, eyes reflective. You have borne the weight, the Titaness says softly. Few could have endured what you now carry. Hera glances at Hephaestus and nods once, acknowledgement without words. The forge feels quieter now, as if it too recognizes the transition. Memory is no longer fractured, scattered, or weaponized. It is focused, aligned, harmonized with the queen who dared to claim it. And as you stand there, breath still uneven, you realize that Hera's borrowed sandals were never just shoes. They were instruments of destiny, keys to hidden truths, and the final proof that courage, will, and audacity can transform what was stolen into what is earned. The forge gradually softens around you, light cooling from fierce brilliance to gentle warmth. You notice the faint hum of the sandals echoing in your chest, a reminder of the enormous journey you've witnessed. Hera stands calmly, her steps now measured and deliberate, as if the very act of walking has restored equilibrium. The shards of memory hover silently, content and ordered, their once turbulent energy settled into a quiet pulse. You take a deep breath, letting it fill every corner of your body, releasing tension like air escaping a balloon. The heat and thunder of the forge fade from your mind, replaced by a gentle, almost imperceptible hum. The soft rhythm of lives remembered, lessons absorbed, and destinies aligned. Even the distant voices of gods and mortals seem muted, harmonized into a lullaby that lingers in the air. Hera moves slowly, the sandals clicking softly against the obsidian floor. and for the first time you perceive not power or rage, but serene authority. Each step resonates like a heartbeat, steady and assured, the kind that comforts rather than commands. You sense the journey's weight has passed, leaving only clarity, peace, and understanding. Mnemosyne retreats, her form dissolving into the soft light, leaving behind a lingering sense of gentle vigilance. Hephaestus quietly tends his forge, the glow of his tools soft and unthreatening. You realize that even in realms of gods and titans, calm can be restored, balance achieved, and memory honored without chaos. The sandals now lie quiet beneath Hera's feet, their glow warm and constant. You take one last look at the scene, the lessons engraved in your mind. Courage requires reckoning, power demands responsibility, and even what is borrowed can become wholly yours if wielded with care. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let your eyes grow heavy. The echoes of gods, titans, and mortals alike fade into a gentle, steady whisper, cradling you into rest. Remember, every story, every memory, every step is part of something larger. So drift gently, and let dreams weave their own path tonight.